Are we live? Are we live now? Okay, so I'm live. So let me try this one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Counter-Strike fans around the world, welcome back to episode 8 of HLTV Confirmed. Oh my god, why am I talking like this? Lucas, explain to everybody why we're 7 minutes late.
Nothing is working. Everything hurts.
Okay, well, that's not a great explanation, but let's get the show going. So that was Lucas, you heard him. Striker, what is your favorite candy or chocolate?
Wow, it's too, dude.
Just need to pick one. I need you to commit. I need you to commit to one. First thing off the top of your mind.
It's a Czech one, so you're not gonna know it's Milka.
Sounds delicious. I'm pretty sure it's in like a purple packaging, right?
It is.
Yep. Well, there we go. Fucking.
That's not Czech chocolate.
Oh, is it Austrian or something?
It's just not German. It's European.
I think it's Austrian.
All you motherfuckers in this part of the world have the same shit. All right. So look, Prof, I want to do some stuff with you just quickly before we introduce our guest. So I want to do some word association. When I say orange, you say
orange. Just orange.
You just say orange. You say orange best. Okay.
I say orange bag.
Okay. I say death. You say.
I say the demon of hell.
Mate, it's meant to be one word. You fucked this up. I was meant to be sending you up there, getting you ready, and I was going to say Kjaerbye, and you just start laughing, but we didn't get there. Anyway, today's show, guys, quickly before we get into the conversation with Threat. Well, Threat's here. We're going to talk about NiKo, the G2 situation, Cloud9, the new players over there, Blast restructuring the prize pool, some rumors of rosters, obviously the retirement home of Dignitas, having to do a bit of euthanasia over there. Some scheduling. We're going to be talking about everything about the players and what they're complaining about and all that fun stuff. I'm probably going to go on about 3 to 5 rants. So prepare yourself. EPL, what's been happening. And of course, we have Threat here. Bjorn, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Even considering our latest results in Pro League that I had to play, I'm good.
All right. Well, if anything, you haven't been mentally unraveled by having to play Counter-Strike again. So that's a good sign. Now we're going to roll the bumper. Lucas, get it going. All right, we're back, and we're going to get stuck straight into it here. So this is the hot seat. I'm not sure if your seat is hot or not. In the car that ESL gave me last season, I had a seat warmer. This year, I haven't found it. It hasn't been needed because we're in summertime. But Threat, let's dive straight into it. Let's not fuck around. Let's not waste any time. Let's get stuck in. And obviously, for those people not too familiar, you were a player, then you were coaching, then you were not coaching, then you were coaching again. What's this return to the coaching scene been like? Where did it come from? How did it come about? Can you give us some details on that?
So sure, I've been coached 2 times, though I would say it's very different. So the first time I joined, everyone who was around in 2016 know all about the coach IGL drama. So I was brought in as an IGL, and I knew both Get-Right and f0rest from before, which means I was kind of a close friends with them, right? So now, like, I got tired of that. Now, when I brought into this team, this is completely different. I feel more like an actual coach. Back then, I was more a tactical advisor / IGL. Now, actually, I'm trying to be a coach, right? I'm not their bro. I'm not their friend. They're fresh. I can teach them things. It would be very strange for me to have that relationship with, let's say, f0rest.
Okay, that's kind of cool that it has changed, because a lot of the times when we have like players on or we're doing interviews during like the broadcast and stuff, I'm like, yeah, you've been playing since 2015 and it's 2020 Counter-Strike and so much has changed. Like, what are the biggest changes for you? And they go, nah, it's the same. And I'm like, well, no, it's not the same. But thanks for that answer. Let's move on. But can you give us a little bit more on that, right? You're saying, so obviously back then you were kind of doing the role as the in-game leader as a 6th man. In terms of the coaching stuff now, you said you're not a bro, but what else has changed? You have a lot more power now. Like, what else in that dynamic has changed?
Yeah, I would say I have more power, or rather, it sounds so weird, just more power. But if you look back, like especially in 2016, the teams was basically controlled by the players. They had all the power, and I think that was really damaging. I mean, just look at it like, you bring in a 70-year-old aim kid, like, he doesn't know what's best for himself. It doesn't make any sense, right? So right now I do have complete control. I have power over who's in the team. Obviously, I cannot just pick anyone. But yeah, I would say power would be the keyword.
Okay. Threat, Prof, do you have anything you want to ask here about the transition back to coaching?
Obviously, it was a weird situation initially, at least from what I remember, because when you were reintroduced most recently, it was also a kind of a thing where Pita was still on the team, and you were, I think, announced as a more like tactical coach or something like that. So how did the transition happen for you to actually take over the team?
So NiP had contacted me a few times throughout the year since I left, and I had just declined them. And then they came to me with a suggestion of just being the analyst. And I was really happy where I were in my life at the moment. I had a decent job, a 9-to-5 life. I really enjoyed it. It was much easier to stay healthy, take care of my body and everything. Though when that came up, I was still watching all the tournaments during those 2 years, right? Even though I was completely drunk. I mean, I did some casting. And I thought, oh, this is actually interesting. I can still have my regular life and do this on top. I still watch CS, so why not get paid for it? Then the months went by, and then they really pushed me to become the main coach. And they did convince me that things were different than it was before. Because one of the main reasons I left was because it was mainly controlled by the players and it was really chaotic. It was really hard to find any structure or build something, because as soon as something went wrong, this maybe is not true for all players, but the players have a tendency to they want to change everything or change something major, because then they get sort of like the honeymoon period, right? And you tend to change something they're not in power of, because that sort of like removes the responsibility away from them. So they told me that they've completely changed that, and it was true. So that they have completely turned that around.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I think that this is one of those roles that we never really get to hear too much about, because from like the coach perspective, you want to hold as much as you can to your chest in terms of how you're delegating and what you're delegating, the direction of the team, those kind of changes, especially around the strategies and stuff. So now that you are back, well, you have been back for some time, is this a role that you still think has like a lot of development across the scene? Like, are there a lot of coaches who are in your position, do you think, where things they have control, or do you think there's still a lot of growth there? Or even the role itself, like Zonic, for example, is one who was leading the way. Do you think that there's more support staff needed, that kind of stuff?
I think it depends a lot on which team we're talking about, because I think some of the teams, they almost have the coach as an analyst. I don't know, but it's sort of like I'm a pet. I'm getting a feeling that he more is like an anti-strat heavy guy, where Sonic, he's sort of like supporting the team. He pushes them in the right direction, but it's rather the players who's actually responsible for the in-game related things, right? So I think it completely depends on which team, and I do think the way forward is to have the coach of more of a macro role, right? You have more this bird's eye view of the team rather than be there and sort of micromanage everything.
Okay. All right, Strike, you got anything on this before we jump to the next topic?
No, I have something on the more recent stuff. So yeah, can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, kick us off there with the new NiP stuff, Striker.
I'm sorry?
You want to kick us off there with the new NiP stuff?
Well, I was going to say something relatively very recent, so I might as well just jump into it, just because we had a talk at the start of the year. Well, at the start of the year at Kjaerbye, a fairly big interview about your return and everything that we've kind of discussed here already. But you also talked about Knock and Twist, and obviously the opping situation there, saying that you look at the opping situation more by map rather than by player. And obviously recently that's the roles have changed quite a bit. Knock is much more in the primary opper role. I don't know where I think that's very rare that he doesn't op now. So why did that change? Why did it just all go to Knock after all?
I think that was more focused on Twist, to be honest. I thought he was doing a really good role on the maps where he had a more supportive role. He's sort of like a micro IGL on the area he controls on the map, and I just really wanted to push him in that direction. I mean, he is the oldest player in the team, and he is the most experienced, and I thought that was just a really good way forward, even though it probably hurt us on some halves. But overall, I thought that was a really good direction for him. So that was actually mainly focused on the Twist rather than having Tim become this star opper.
Okay, that's curious because I think that when we were talking about this in the early stages with this transition, we were just expecting it to be Nork to come on through and pick up that primary AWP role. It obviously has to be something Nork's comfortable with, right? Like he looks like he is at home with it, just doing it all the time. Does he have problems with it? Is he one of those players, Threat? Because I know we've all played with them and had them in the team before, and you've had AWPers, and they're happy to do it, but as soon as they have like 1 or 2 bad games, they shy away from it. They don't want to pick it up as much. Or is he just like, give it to me, let me get stuck in?
I think it's both. When it's in a bad mood, yeah, you sure get a twist or rest pick it up, and I'm fine with that. Though it's usually them just if they have a bad start, they can just get into this really bad mindset. Oh, this is a bad game. I'm having a bad op game, but in reality, I don't know. Saiwu just one-shot him 3 rounds in a row. It's nothing to do with his own performance.
Sure.
But sure, that can happen with him. Though he's really working on it.
So I think another question with when you made the decision with the whole Lekro-hampus scenario there, a lot of people were also asking the question, why not Twist? Why was Twist not the one to go and Lekro not the one to stay? That seemed like it was a pretty common question at the time. What that went into keeping Twist over Lekro? Was it to do with the duality of the AWPers, or what were you thinking there?
I think it was rather more the vision of going forward. Obviously, Lekro is, as everyone knows, he was probably like the 2nd or 3rd best individual player in the team at that point. He's a very, very skilled player. Though I just didn't see him fitting in this team in the long run. And having Hampus as an option, changing the IGL, at that point it was just the perfect thing to do, and I kind of knew it was probably going to hurt us a bit on the individual level. Though I think me included, I've been really surprised with how well Hampus has performed individually.
Yeah, Hampus is. Yeah,
I wanted to ask about the reaction. I mean, SPUNJ already talked about the reaction. A lot of it was like, why was Lekro even removed? And if you want to bring in Hampus, probably remove Twist, but most likely don't even change anything. The players weren't consulted. All of these things were like in the public, and people are saying that the NiP maybe isn't doing a good job. What was the reaction to you, like you reading that and inside of the team seeing like a lot of criticism for that move that ended up doing, I think, pretty well?
Yeah, I knew there were going to be a lot of drama, and I knew it was going to be a big shock to the players because this is probably the first time they really just been handed this information. And if it wasn't for Corona and the tournaments just being day to day, like after each other, we probably would have said it in when we have more time to prepare. Though this was not the case, so we could either say it immediately, almost like 2 days to the next tournament, or we keep playing with Lekro, who we knew we were going to change, right? So we just came to the conclusion this is the best decision to do it. We just got them on a call and just told them straight up, like, okay, this is happening. Boom.
Wow. How long was it between telling that to the players and the official announcement? Because I think it was like pretty short, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was the day before, the same day.
Wow. Okay. Well, look, I like that. Like, I'm definitely all going down the road here with the coaches and the org having more control over how but I guess as well as that, we all know we're dealing with kids, right? So was there any weird pushback or any weirdness about a lot of these guys have played with Hampus before, right?
Yeah, I think I was expecting. I mean, I've been brought up in this really bad environment, and I was a part of it, right? I would say the entire old. Now I'm gonna piss on the entire old Swedish Xizt generation, but fuck it, I'm part of it, right? So I'm pissing on myself. Like, it was just very lazy, just very always wanted to take the shortcuts to everything. So I was expecting that sort of response, like, oh, but I didn't have any say in this. Is this really the right choice? But I think a lot of players are actually open. They actually like the idea that others are taking these decisions from them. Like, sure, there could be some ways like, oh, but yada yada, and they're close friends, obviously, so it's hard for them emotionally. But I don't think anyone was like really upset about it in the way we handled it.
I think it's much worse emotionally if you are the one who has to make that decision to cut a friend urinal or something. So having that responsibility taken from you is actually a good thing in most cases, I think.
I think it's great in the sense that there's no longer going to be these like, well, there definitely still are right now. Like, it's going on as we speak. But in terms of certain teams, and your one would be falling in that direction, I assume Astralis probably similar things, is there's no more of that fucking Steam friends or WhatsApp messages or Facebook messages, like where you're talking about like the players on the team behind their back and who you're going to cut and who you're going to pick up. And those conversations will never even come past their minds anymore, right? So that, unless obviously they're super unhappy with somebody, and then I guess you go through the proper management chains and shit. But that was a whole part of how Counter-Strike used to be, was if you wanted to make a change, you had to do it in kind of a sly manner, because you had to make sure you had somebody ready to take that spot before you fucking cut them. So that has to be a positive for the team, right? You'd say?
Yeah, it's really funny you brought up the Steam friends, because I used that exact example with the players. Sort of like, there's no fucking Steam friends. I see you writing to each other. Just be very open with a like critique to each other. Don't write something behind someone's back. I mean, if this is really sensitive, sometimes it can go through me. I think it's fine, but it should be directed to each other. But it's and they've been slightly part of that. But what I like about these players is they all understand like how toxic that is, right? So they've done it, but they understand it's wrong.
Sure. Well, I guess the thing is, and it's the structures that, like, for example, that you're building now, this is the first time that we're really ever seeing that. So what's kind of, at least your approach to coaching now? Do you get to set the agenda? Do you get to set, like, in terms of, oh, well, this is what we're going to be diving into today, or this is the kind of approach we want here? Is it all from you, or do NiP have people to help facilitate ideas? Like, how does this work?
So I have this, we'll call it a performance team. So I do work with some other people who are very experienced in professional sports, who puts up the schedule. It really helps me. So when I feel like I'm maybe pushing the players too hard, they can sort of help me. Okay, this is the time you want to do it. This is the time you don't want to do it. And it also makes me feel more okay with when the players, I can tell, like, maybe they start complaining, oh, it's too much right now, but I'm like, okay, no, now is actually the time where I have to push. Okay, now we have to slightly take the foot off the gas, right? So there are more people helping me, but I do take the final decisions.
Okay, nice. So I guess we can jump into more of the recent stuff that's been going on with the team. Now, coming out of the break...
Can I actually ask one question before?
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned the f0rest at the beginning, and like having these fresh new guys. We talked about all of the benefits that has. When you came in the team, f0rest was still there. So what was your view on f0rest actually leaving NiP? Was that something that you obviously don't want to kick f0rest? I don't think people will just go on and say that. But was there like a sense of relief that he left the team and that you can like start fresh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it hurt the team in the short run, because f0rest is still a very good player. He probably had at least a few years left at the top 10 level. Though considering he has a family, just make things a lot more difficult. Like, I don't understand how you would make that work. And just having it completely fresh with new young players, yes. So it was sort of a sigh of relief when he just left.
It was a strange time then, right? Because I think everyone had heard the rumors of what was going on with the whole Dignitas project, and if f0rest didn't go over there, they would have been missing the biggest name. So I'm sure that must have been a strange time at the NiP camp, because there was all that Fifi drama as well. Okay. Anyway, let's fucking leave that behind, and let's
kind of unreal. I just checked something back just to see how f0rest has been doing under Dignitas, because obviously they've been playing these like fairly random tournaments that you don't really pay attention to too much. Mm-hmm. And he's not had a below average rated event since the last major.
But f0rest is just always that guy who just...
Exactly.
He just chugs along. I remember, though, when they were still playing, and they were playing, like, when he was part of NiP, and they kind of had that resurgence in 2019 for a little while. But I remember looking at his stats, and every time they went up against, like, a team that they should beat, he was always performing well. But then when they went up against, like, the big dogs, there was a real difference in his stat lines there. So maybe he can turn it around. Obviously, Dignitas going through some restructuring at the moment. Anyway, the current... Who's mowing their lawn? Who's out there?
There is some.
Is that Lucas? Lucas.
Or maybe he just muted himself. Maybe
It
was
is.
him.
There we go.
Lucas is mowing the lawn while
and
producing
Lucas
the
is
show.
he's doing too many things at once. Anyway, we're going to talk about the more current results and whatnot with NiP. So, for people who aren't too familiar with it, you guys came out. There was Cologne, then we just had Pro League. You actually had to step in to play a couple of games because Nork's out for exhaustion. I think that was the statement. I don't remember exactly. But the question I kind of want to kick this off with is coming out of that break. A lot of the teams who we were interviewing and talking to were saying NiP was like the team to look out for. And then obviously you guys have had some performances that are a bit under where I'm sure you'd like it to be. But why do you think teams had such a target on you guys, or thinking that you guys had so much potential for this half of the year?
I think it sort of comes from the way we prepared for Cologne, because I think, and this is sort of come back to this as an actual mistake from me, is sort of where you look at the circuit. Look, where I'm coming from, you have like, you prepare for a tournament, you go to the tournament, and then you go home, and you have a break, and then you prepare again, and you go to a tournament, right? So now it's you prepare, and then you have a tournament, and then you have a tournament, and then you have a tournament. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And, so what I've sort of noticed is the way I've been doing it is sort of optimized for this one tournament, right? So I've sort of built the playbook a bit wrong. Perhaps it's you can only use it sort of for one tournament, and then when teams have just this tiny bit of periods to prepare, we don't have any time to change anything, and that's when it becomes really awkward, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that really hurts us, but it did work in Cologne because, well, it was the first tournament, and also combined with, like, at that point we were playing together from the office. I mean, both NiKo and Plopsky were there for a long time. These tournaments tend to linger quite long. So afterwards, when Pro League, I mean, I think we lost Vitality in semifinal, and then we played Vitality 3 days after in Pro League. I mean, it's almost like it's ridiculous. But I told them, okay, we're gonna go home. We have to do some sort of resting here. Even though I probably knew it was gonna make us perform like a bit less.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess the Pro League dramas are down to that in your mind. Now the Nork situation, I don't know. Are we clear to talk about that, Prof?
I don't know. Why'd you ask me?
I don't know, because on the thing before you had the Nork issues and now they're gone. So I was like, I don't know if I'm not allowed to talk about it or not.
I don't know.
But could you maybe shed a little bit more light on the whole Nork scenario? Because obviously we know there's burnout with these players and stuff that happens like that. But it just seems like we're only, like a month and a half in since the player break. So I think it comes as a shock to people to see this so quickly.
Yeah, I think the way people perceive it in the media is a bit different from reality. So first of all, this is not a burnout. Like a proper burnout is really bad. You're probably not going to come back from a real burnout. So this is more we're trying to preemptively stop this from happening. And I don't want to go into details, but we have sort of measured it in a way where we're not just guessing, oh, he looked tired. No, and I'm not making these decisions. I'm not a medical expert by any means. So, and the first thing here is, okay, need to have some sort of morale to not actually push the players to be burned out. But after that, it also comes down to, okay, how do we fix it? And I think a thing that's not talked about enough in the burnout discussion is that most of this responsibility should go back to the players. Yeah, because I do think what's happening is a lot of these gamers or professional players, a lot of them have bad habits. They come from really bad habits. They maybe don't have the best time management, and they get thrown into a stressful schedule or a more stressful schedule, and they don't know how to deal with it. And that means they do actually have enough time if they would manage it. And I think it's sort of like they have to take that responsibility, but we're definitely here to help them do that, because it's hard when you've never done it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people forget in ways that these are, in a lot of cases, just kids, right, who have never had to go out there into I say the real world. Obviously this is part of the real world. We have lived it now for a very long time, but I mean in terms of like a traditional 9 to 5 or working environment. I'm sure a lot of these guys have never ever had to do that on a full-time scale and had to go through those same hoops. Whereas this here, you come out of the gaming lifestyle where you're waking up at what did we used to do back in the day? You know, you'd wake up in the early afternoon after going to bed at 4 or 5 in the morning as the sun's coming up and doing all that bullshit. I'm sure they still probably do that stuff now. So yeah,
that's really what I did today.
So there you go. So living the game of lifestyle, mate. But hopefully he's not out for too long. We won't dig into that any further because there is, you know, week 2 week break now before New York kicks off for you guys. I wanted to ask a couple of questions with the Hampus in-game leading stuff, because I think I asked you on broadcast a couple of weeks ago about like if he was like doing the lion's share of calling, and you said yeah, he's doing all the calling. You might chip in every now and again. Is that really quite difficult to do with some of the calls? Because Hampus, the way that he has been calling compared to when Lekro was in the team, you guys looked a lot slower and a lot more methodical when Lekro was calling, to now with Hampus, he feels like he makes a lot more faster calls or a lot more instant calls. Is that the case?
Yeah, and they have very different styles of calling. I do think our tempo has, like, we're playing a lot faster. I think that's both good and bad. And yeah, sometimes it is difficult to see. Like, obviously, I don't agree with all his calls, right? But it's really important for me that he actually makes mistakes and learn from them, rather than that I'm there and like, oh, you have to call exactly like I want to. And I think the unique thing with Hampus is that he's a leader, right?
Sure.
He makes decisions and he calls people out if they do mistakes, and that's something that's really lacking, especially in Scandinavia. Okay. Or in Sweden. I mean, Denmark obviously I don't know why, but like all the talent.
So who else in Sweden, like if you had to think, are there any other names who are like coming up who are leaders at all? Is there anybody?
No, like okay, maybe Golden. I never even spoken with Golden, so I don't know.
Okay.
But maybe this is a thing where, I don't know, the sort of way forward in Swedish CS is you go through this like FPL, SPL ladders, and you just focus on your own individual skills. So there will be no leaders, and you can actually come quite far just by being good individually. But sort of like, especially if you want to play in a Swedish team, you sort of hit like this brick wall in the top 10, because then you need that individual skill is just a prerequisite. Then you need to put everything on top of that.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's a problem a lot of scenes have, right? Like I think North America is another one that has, but you would never think Sweden, of all places, would have that problem. But yeah, fair enough.
To be fair, Sweden's never really been like massively leader based, or I don't know what you want to call it. They've not been tactical, and not even in 1.6, to be honest. Like Karn's Fnatic was never a mega tactical team, or like go ahead. Obviously, you played with that team.
Yeah, well, that's the thing when I talked about the old Swedish CS guard, right? I think the biggest curse for old Swedes who played CS was their talent. They were too talented. So they could just play because they were so talented at the game. I have no idea why Sweden was so talented in CS, but obviously we were. We dominated the scene for so long, and I don't think we did particularly something like we practiced the right way. I have no idea why. But when like other countries sort of caught up to us, they had been like practicing so hard, and we're sort of just feels like we're lagging behind that department, right? Because sort of like Denmark, they have just so many great IGLs, and it feels like they're learning the right way from the beginning.
They have lots of grassroots stuff over there. If we get Martin fucking started on that, we'll be here all week. He wants us to bring on someone from his league for an interview. But that might be the time for another show. Now, Prof, you got any questions here before we move forward?
There's a good question in chat talking about like calling and the styles of play, comparing like what is played today in terms of CS and like 2016 or before that, like when you coach the old NiP or when you're still playing. How do you see the change in the game?
There are actually a lot of changes, I'd say. I mean, the basics are still sort of there. It's just gotten a lot more complicated. Sort of like when I got back to especially overpass, it sort of felt like I had to relearn the map. It's like, this is sort of how you do it now. Same with train. I guess the maps become more figured out, and people, I think maybe Astralis started this because I just quit when they started their super era. They sort of showed us, okay, there is actually like this layer, another layer to all of this, which you can abuse, which is, I think, is both interesting and also very stressful when you work in it, because you need to be on the top all the time on everything. if you just look at the online Corona tournaments, and just for us, we could feel like, oh, we're the best Vertigo team in the world. And then all of a sudden, we're like, we lost it 5 times in a row. And we're like, oh, we were the best team in the world 2 weeks ago.
So tell me, do you enjoy the CS that's being played now more than what was going on before? Like, when you think about the way when you came into NiP, when you started playing, like a very structured cache, it seemed like like you could watch the demo, you could see the strats to see like, okay, they won because they called this and through like these flashes. It seemed like much more easier to understand compared to nowadays, where every player has to have like 70 micro movements on point, like taking these like jiggle peek here, jiggle peek there, get this aim duel if it's offered, and then like last 30 seconds is when the call happens. So I feel like that also changed quite a lot. So how do you see that? Is it better or is it worse?
I do enjoy it more. I said it's a bit more stressful, but it is more interesting. It's becoming way more theoretical, and especially at the top level, you can see things. So if you come from a lower level, let's say you're a like top 100 team, you see these things some of the top teams do. So I would say like you would never want to do that, like never. But in the top team, I can have a recent example. I mean, Astralis B-rushed us on Dust 2. And they destroyed us, and it was all sort of like a meta thing, and they knew sort of how we were playing. So if you would just take that out of context and you see, oh, Astralis rushed B on the first weapon round on Dust 2, like especially since they changed the doors, like you cannot win a B rush on Dust 2 if there are 2 people there. But it sort of becomes a theoretical thing where they're like, okay, we have not a lot invested in this round. As no one rushes B, maybe they will actually stack 4 towards A because they have a lot to lose. That's why we're going to B-rush, because we can still buy the next round. And you sort of like start to put the rounds together. It actually sort of makes sense, even though it is a big risk. And it would be a default loss if we just had the stand positions. But they were right that time. So that part has gotten a lot more sophisticated. And I do think that's interesting.
I'm really just... So I remember like when I was in game leading, all of my stuff was basically from spawn. Like my mid-round calling was fucking terrible because we never had the mid-round call in Australia because we'd just kill everybody, right? So like when I was playing again international Counter-Strike, it was like these fast space-taking strategies off the bat, and that's what we'd do. We'd smoke splashes, everything goes, you take the space, hopefully we win the duels, and then we can win out in the mid-round, right? But now it feels like no matter what happens, and Heroic, I think, are the best example of this, they'll do something at the start of the round, and they'll go and they'll force the CT side to use all their utility, fucking rotate everybody, and then they'll just leave the bomb site. And then they'll just play this like drawn out 50-second mid-round, walking around the map, forcing rotations, jiggling everywhere, flashing for each other across the other side of the map. And I'm like, holy shit. Like these kids now are staying composed in rounds for the full duration. So we've gone up in the bomb timer. So retakes now, like on certain maps, seem more possible. The rounds are just longer in general. And each fight, like it doesn't matter. The round now isn't done if you lose one key duel because there's so many different ways into it. And that's why when I do talk to these players and ask them the interview questions, oh, what's changed? They go, oh, nothing really. I don't think they get to see it, because they're like living it every single day, right? Like they're evolving with the game and they go, well, I just have to get better at this, or I just have to start doing this, or this is the way I have to think. Whereas like sitting here watching it, and then if you go back and you watch some of the games from 2015, 2016, the Counter-Strike was so different. Like I don't think you can even compare the styles, because like Kenny could just win around with an AWP single-handedly. Now he's lucky if he can even repick. And you can tell with the commentary as well, right? Because I'm sitting next to Machine and Pansy every day, and there's only certain type of matchups where they get to start going with the play-by-play. Because otherwise what happens is a round will happen, an opening duel will happen, and then it slows down. There's no ramping. The ramping can only happen like in the fucking crazy moments when it's Mouse Sports versus... I don't know, who were they playing the other day? It was fucking wild the other day. Like everyone was just biffing and brawling and fighting and they're not letting the bomb down. And that's like, okay, cool. Like this is the older style of CS. And now it mainly feels like we're just seeing everybody is like, especially in Europe, North America is still, don't get me started on North America. But in Europe, it's like, you can clearly see like how each round can be won. And anyway, I've gone on a bit of a tangent here. Let's keep it going. We got any more questions for Threat for the hot seat, guys, or we move to the recent news?
I think we move on and then we can finish off with like the viewer questions and whoever has something from chat.
Sweet. All right, Lucas, play the bumper. Let's get into the recent news. All right, we're back. We've got lots of news going on lately. It's all good news. Well, I don't know if it's all good news. We've got news. There's definitely news. FaZe, they're probably dead, guys. They're probably dead. I know we don't like hearing that, but that's probably what's happening. And the news is to do with NiKo apparently going to G2. Now, Striker, what's the reports that came out with this? Because I know you guys had one. Was it 1PV or what? I don't even know the fucking
1PV,
website.
yeah.
Well, so what's
Mel's
the news
website,
situation here?
Well, essentially, G2 are definitely interested in NiKo and are trying to buy him out. Obviously, it's still kind of up in the air whether they're actually going to be able to, because it sounds like it's going to be a massive buyout, and it just makes sense considering it is NiKo we're talking about here, right? At the time when he went from Mousesports to FaZe, at the time it was touted as the biggest buyout of all time, you know, or one of the biggest for sure. And I think that's even since been kind of confirmed. So obviously, with this type of a player, these buyout scenarios were probably going to take some time because of the negotiation part of it and stuff like that. And perhaps somebody else comes in like a Cloud9 or whatever, you know, and lines up another bid, and it just complicates things, right? So at this point, we don't know that it's going to happen, but we know that there's definitely interest, and it just makes sense from all kinds of points of view, right? There's Hunter on G2. They obviously want to kind of like improve the firepower, you know, and take that to the next level. Carlos has always kind of has always used NiKo as an example of a player who he'd always want to get. You know, he wants to be that team who just, you know, goes out and gets the biggest star player that he can get and take that opportunity. So it just makes sense from every point of view.
So with that in mind, Prof, who goes, Amanek or Jax, or do they do a 6-man roster? What do you think?
It might be. I mean, I think obviously Amanek makes sense role-wise. I think NiKo would fit in there and be like, even if there are like a few areas where they would maybe lose, or maybe they need to give him more space or whatever, I think overall, I think it's a very good like-for-like change where it's mostly an improvement in almost all regards, right? So when you put that in, it makes sense. Maybe Amanek would then stay in as the 6th player if something happens, something like that. I don't know, because I feel like they have a good relationship with him. I don't think they're dissatisfied with what he offered. On the other hand, maybe he doesn't want to do it, then they let him explore other options. Anything is possible. Maybe Amanek then goes to Vitality. That also kind of makes sense. Maybe, who knows? But that's like a long way down the road, I guess, as Striker says. Do you know, Milan, maybe how long NiKo's contract is with FaZe? Do we have like a vague idea?
No idea, actually. I can check when he got signed exactly, and you can kind of probably like make an assumption, but I actually don't remember when exactly. He was signed like
2017, right?
Yeah, early in 2017, right? Like something like January.
February 2017 is when you guys have your news post. So
yeah, right.
Then
I mean, it could be like two 2-year contracts, you know, like a 2-year extension, like a year and a half ago or something. So there could be like a half a year left on his contract by now. But at the same time, like, he's the type of a player you would probably want to tie down for longer, if it is possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like another 2 years on his contract at this point. And that just makes the buyout fucking insane, because he is just that type of a player.
Okay, so Threat, if you saw NiKo join and take Amanek's spot on that team, do you think it'd be a good move for G2?
Yeah, so when I first saw it, you look at G2's lineup, and okay, Hunter is with NiKo now, and you have Kenny as Nexa, and Jax has been playing out of his mind, to be honest, this past year. Though, like, I want to jump on the hype train, but then at the same time, if you look at G2's results, it's really been lacking, and I don't necessarily think Amanek has been like playing bad or anything. So I'm more like, okay, sure it's NiKo, but he also takes a lot of space, right? So I think it would be an improvement, but I don't want to jump on the hype train. It's like, oh, now they're going to be the 2017 FaZe, right? So he just wins everything.
Yeah, I look at it and I think it could... From a standpoint where they're going to get more firepower, yeah, that's definitely going to happen. But what are they going to lose? Like, who's going to have to take the bitch roles that Amanek is playing right now? Because he is playing some pretty shitty positions. Like, he has to play buyouts on Mirage. Like, nobody wants to play buyouts on Mirage. I'm sure NiKo's not going to want to play buyouts on Mirage. So I'm just curious as to what they're going to mix around. It would make sense. Like, NiKo could do some secondary AWPing. That's what Amanek does. But what if we flip this for a second? Because from the G2 side of things, we can only see positives. Right, if NiKo goes, what do you reckon happens to FaZe? Do you think they're done?
It's very hard to say. I do think they need to revamp that roster or like more than NiKo if they want to make a change. Though sometimes if you take away a player that takes a lot of space, it could be very healthy for the rest of the team, right? So I do. If they remove NiKo and change the lineup, I don't think they will be great. Though they have not been great recently anyway, so they're probably not going to get worse. That's the thing, right? Probably going to get some honeymoon period going. Maybe they can get some new talent. Sure, I could see a world where they. I mean, the only players is still like when they still have Rain, who hasn't really shown anything for a long time, so they sort of need him to step up.
Yeah, let's look at it this way, Prof. What are the odds that Cold Zero sticks around if NiKo goes?
I think not the greatest, right? It's obvious that connection, like the personal connection between two, made that move happen, made Cold Zero join FaZe. Without NiKo in the team, doesn't really make sense that much anymore, especially if they don't get like a brilliant in-game leader or something like that, like literally like Glaive or some shit. Like it just doesn't make sense. So I did a kind of a joking tweet this morning, like minus NiKo, minus Coldzera, just because if NiKo leaves, Coldzera probably also explores other options, and then plus Dexter, obviously, because he's our boy here on the show.
We got to get him out,
and
get him somewhere.
Plus, we know Mad Lands are also going through some shit, so just get Sush, however you pronounce it, and add that. You put Kjaerbye into more star roles. It's like a completely new team.
Oh dear. Okay.
The one problem I see with that, right, is okay. It's gonna be. Let's say if it's hard to get NiKo out of this team, it's gonna be hard to get Cold Zero out of this team as well. Like it's not gonna be easy anybody to get him. So like sure he can kind of like bench himself and whatever, stay on the payroll or whatever if nobody is interested in paying a 1 million buyout for Cold Zero and NiKo at the same time, you know. So it's just like it's going to be hard.
They're just going to wash their hands there. They'll pull out a Counter-Strike. Like, what would be the point of rebuilding right now? Like, if you're going to rebuild without any in-game leader or any direction, like, what's the fucking point? And just save yourself the money.
They are like a part of a lot of agreements and stuff like that. So I'm not sure that's going to be an option for them. Like, they are in the Louvre agreement, right? Yeah. They are in Blast as well. And I don't think there's anything else at this point, right? That they're part of. But it's like that's a lot of. Sorry?
Are EG a part of any of those?
They are in the Louvre, no?
Well, I've heard rumors that EG want to pull out of CS. You know, like there's like apparently a lot of teams right now, especially in the North American side of things, that want to pull out of Counter-Strike. Right?
I've never heard that. So
yeah, I'm keeping my fucking head to the ground, mate. I'm listening to all the shit. It's all coming through. So I'm hearing stuff like that a lot of orgs want to be pulling out of CS at the moment. I don't know if it's because they're locked in North America. I don't know if it's because of Valorant. I don't know what's going on, but I'm hearing that there's like lots of movement and shaking that could be going down into the next year. So like, that's why when I think about this, if I'm FaZe, I get they're part of those agreements, but where do you even start? The only player I'd want to keep from that team right now is Brokey. I'd build around Brokey. Like
imagine saying that like a year ago.
Isn't that insane though? Like no offense to Kjaerbye, he's obviously had a great career. He's been a major MVP, but I think that the roster move of FaZe picking him up, that is the worst roster move of 2020. I'm trying to sit here and think in like a tier 1 level of Counter-Strike, if there was a move that was as bad as that. That move makes zero sense.
There is one thing that you could consider, and then you can make it less bad of a move. If we were in an era where everyone published like buyouts and stuff like that,
we're getting there.
Obviously, Kjaerbye was not obviously, but from what I know, he was a free transfer. He just walked in.
Oh, that is confirmed. He was.
Yeah, so you get a very experienced player, also like fan base and all of that for nothing, essentially just for a salary. So from that perspective, it was like a decent gamble at least. But like role wise, it wasn't. Probably not just his fault. FaZe suddenly like super.
Definitely not his fault. But like, let's think about what the team needed. Right, it wasn't Kjaerbye. Right, like I'm not saying Kjaerbye couldn't have gone somewhere and been good. It just the team didn't need Kjaerbye. Like, why would we go from a position where they were looking good at FaZe at Blast at the start of the year? We're looking sick. I thought they looked great. They had great structure. Everything was looking good. They had a good baseline of strategies that I thought that they were going to build off and things. And the role change. Brokey came over to the AWP. He was looking really good. Olaf was playing that role, coming through, doing some things were looking like they were headed in the right direction. You had the brain trust of NiKo, coldzera, Janko all coming together. Things were really looking good. And then it just is all fallen apart. And look, I think that motivation is probably a factor for some of the players in the team right now, but I just don't see, if NiKo goes, there's no way in my mind they stay together.
I think the biggest problem is them getting an IGL, because obviously they haven't been able to get one that they liked, for a long time. So, and obviously this just shows with the Kjaerbye move. They just, like Prof said, this was a free transfer. That just shows the level of commitment FaZe is willing, or rather not willing, to put into CS anymore, with paying a buyout for an Alex or whatever,
Come on, like they literally bought fucking coldzera before that.
But that's the problem though. It didn't pay off, did it?
But it's true.
Let's say they bought him for like $1 million, and obviously they've won 3 tournaments since then or something. It's been a year since.
This is the discussion here is like what NiKo alluded to on Twitter as well. It's like people are talking so much shit, they don't know what actually happened behind the scenes. And what we know about FaZe in general, they aren't really an hands-on org. They don't have a threat that's controlling the roster. So it's a very different approach. On one hand, they didn't really do the roster changes maybe on time, and they maybe didn't pick up a guy when they could have, or made a gamble. At the same time, they didn't really give that much support when maybe an opportunity was there to act quickly and then get a player that was available. So I don't know where there is a bit of responsibility on both, but I'm not sure who is more to blame, like the players or the organization in this situation.
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll find out one day, but let's keep the news ticking along here. Threat, I don't know if you've been seeing what my boy Henry's been up to. But he's making a bit of a splash, and he's making a lot of big announcements, and it seems quite clear from these announcements he wants to fill out certain roles. Do you know anything about this mezii kid that he's picked up?
Yeah, I actually do, because Hampus played with him in Gamer Legion. And I remember when we brought Hampus in, he had a lot of positive things to say about mezii.
Okay.
Because he was sort of he had to play MDL with them when he first was on our team. And he just said, this kid is amazing. He's really good, actually. And I actually watched some of their games, and he was on top of the scoreboard every single match. So sure. I mean, it's sort of players that sort of comes a bit under the radar. For me, Brokey was one of those. I knew he sort of was in FPL, but that's all I knew. And then he comes into FaZe, and as you just said, he probably the most interesting prospect in FaZe right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a really interesting pickup, and I think it's the sort of pickup you need to do these days.
So do you think this approach that Henry's clearly going for, because it seems like with Alex the in-game leader, woxic, star/AWPer, right, of the team, we obviously don't know who the last 2 players are going to be, but mezii clearly, young up-and-comer, he's going to have a really good work ethic, could potentially be a very good talent. Do you think this is like the way we might see Counter-Strike go in the future, where teams are actually just built on these more hard-based roles? Because we seem to flip-flop away from it. For a while there, all the talk was about roles, and it was like, no, well, everyone needs to do everything. Now everybody knows they still need to do everything, but we have people who are specializing in the roles, obviously. Do you think we'll continue seeing teams go that way, or what's your take on that?
I think it's really, really hard to say, because I'm in the camp where I do think eventually we will slightly move away from the roles, and it will be more... Okay, it will be roles, but not in the way we're talking about it right now. And as I talked with you earlier this year, Striker, that I do still think it's a bit more map-based. So what you want to do is you just look at the maps and you see if this makes sense. Like, where would you put this player? Does he want to play here? Yada, yada. And also, when you do this, you will always come to the conclusion that it will never be perfect. So you're just trying to find the best possible match, rather than, okay, this is a... Because some of the roles are very strange. You talk about the sort of like lurker role. So you play like you're by yourself on the side of the map, and people would say, okay, on Mirage, you would be the Palace player, or on the Overpass, you would be the guy going towards B. You always throw the Molotov and spam the wooden panel, right? I still say those roles are completely different. even though you could, it's very strange for me. I would almost put different players in those, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because the one on overpass is more like, okay, you have to sort of build this pattern, whereas Mirage is just a rather thing, okay, it gets specific here, right? Because okay, we're just gonna push. Should I actually not hold a ramp this round? Maybe go with the team because I can be an extra body there. I just think it's strange. It's particularly those two roles that you sort of look at them and you think it's the same. Yeah, but they're actually really different, and that's where I sort of they lose me when it comes to having these roles. I would say IGL and Opper. Sure, like that, I'm on board that far. But after that, like entry fragger, I'm not really on board with that.
Yeah, changes per position, per strategy, per scenario, right? So I think here with the Cloud9 focus, the woxic name getting thrown on out here, Prof. How do you feel about him being? He's clearly one of the key pickups for this team, right? How do you feel with him being one of the star signings?
I'm actually surprised that people have not been like hyped about this woxic signing. Like, of course, a lot of people are, but there is a lot, like a not how do I say this? There are enough people saying like this is a trash pickup that I noticed it, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, where did this come from? Like, were they watching some other form of CS that I haven't been watching? Of course, yes. Maybe the online phase of mouse sports the last couple of months for woxic weren't that great, but if we are judging him on that, I really don't know. Like, there is no reason to think that is his permanent form from now on. Like, that doesn't make any sense for me. So I'm sold on that. I think Alex and woxic, that's, as Threat said, those are the two roles you need to have in every team. Everything else you can kind of figure out. Maybe this guy doesn't want to play so much aggressive, this guy wants to play a bit passive, so maybe flip and flop, whatever. But if you have a good op or you have a good in-game leader, I think that's like the recipe to build a good team.
Okay.
I think mainly people just had a problem with that report that said that he was essentially kicked out of mouse sports because of his behavior, right? Because people, it just became this like woxic is toxic conversation, and I'm not sure. I guess people just overrated that report, right? Obviously, even if there were some problems with motivation and stuff like that, that doesn't say that that's going to be the case in the next team as well. Sure, maybe like down the line it's going to happen this way, but that motivation is going to come back for like a new project and stuff like that. So at least for the start of it, I don't see a problem with a pickup like this, even if there is a certain reputation tied to a player. But it's still like people have just been hammering too hard on that, just making woxic out to be like this horrible player that's not going to fit into any team.
I've heard of almost every player in the scene at one point from one guy at least that he was like a shit teammate for some reason. Like, either he was like too selfish in the game or didn't want to practice or didn't wake up on time for practice, or like the only difference with this woxic situation is that it became public, and most of these other things don't really go public. So I guess people that I definitely muted my phone. I definitely muted.
It's all right. We're not even on air. Machine sometimes forgets to mute his phone, so don't worry about it. It's all good, man. We just move with it.
So yeah, the thing is, like, people just didn't know that many information about other players. So then they see this and it's like, oh, this guy is super toxic. He can't play in any team ever.
Sure. Look, I have a lot of reservations. Not with the woxic pickup. He's probably the safest out of the two. I find it's a lot of money being spent, especially on the Alex one. And I know that Alex like watches the show from time to time, but this is meant from like a completely fair angle, I feel. He hasn't played top level Counter-Strike in what, 6 months now?
Yep.
Right? So he's going to get paid now a shitload of money to have to come in and deliver. And it sounds like from Henry that if they don't deliver, then they're going to quickly, feel a bit of his wrath. And I'm not sure, obviously, how much intention is there from him to be enforcing this kind of stuff. But Alex, having not played at the top level of Counter-Strike for 6 months, worries me a little bit. Not necessarily from his fragging form, but the game, it's constantly evolving and changing. And if he had issues with burnout in the past, which was part of the reason he stepped down, right? Because he didn't want to do all the traveling and stuff. I know there's no traveling at the moment, so it's a different thing, but it's still going to be a lot of games. If he's playing in some of these leagues, they need to qualify for a lot of these. They won't be Pro League and stuff. They have Flashpoint or something along those lines. So it still could be a lot of games. So I'm worried there from mainly the he hasn't been playing for a while factor, and mezii, we haven't seen him at tier 1, right? So it really depends on who these last 2 pickups are. The last 2 have to be at least semi-experienced names. They have to be players who can hit the ground running, because otherwise there's some big risk factors here with the way that the team is currently set up. So I don't know if anyone I don't know if that's a fair take. It's just one that I thought.
I think it's a fair take. It really depends on the last 2 players. Like, it depends on what you heard are the players that are being looked at, and if those players are going to be acquired by Cloud9, right? Because from what was rumored around, like, they need to buy out someone from like a top 20 team, and probably some of the better players from a top 20 team to finalize this roster to be like a very nice team, respectful team, and who knows how that goes, right? A lot of moving pieces at the moment.
We'll get Rain. He might be available from FaZe soon. See if you can bring him back to life. Let's just do that. Grab some players from all the teams.
That's what I wouldn't want to see, to be fair.
You don't want that?
I mean, Rain specifically, maybe not. I'm not entirely sure. I'm kind of on the fence about Rain at this point. I'm not sure if it's just down to FaZe, kind of crumbling altogether, or down to him actually dipping in form. It just seems like a combination of the two, maybe. So I'm just a little bit on the fence about him, but I'm just hoping that we don't see, the typical route of, let's get some players that used to be good. Like, I don't want to use coldzera as an example because I think he's still a very good player, but obviously, he's not the best player in the world that he was 3 years ago. So that's kind of the thinking that I don't want to see from a team like Cloud9 that wants to attack the top positions in the world. Just because you do need to take some risks on some of these up and coming players like a mezii. That's why I kind of like that pickup, even though he is obviously entirely unproven. But it's just like these days, I think you do need to take risks rather than just going with like the safe team that could work out, but you just don't really know.
Yeah, I have to agree with Chad here as well. That I do think for me the riskiest pickup might actually be Alex. Because they're putting so much, like he's going to be the IGL, and you look at what he did for Vitality. Because when he was on Vitality, let's say 1 year ago, I was all on board with the Alex hype train. He's the IGL. Vitality is becoming, I think they were ranked number 1 in the world with him a few times.
Yeah.
And then
actually they weren't number 2 is highest. That they only broke number 1 now with Apex for the first time.
Okay, that even more proves my point here. So what happens is they change him, and everyone, me included, thought, okay, now this is gonna really hurt, right? Like, and they bring in mezii, and mezii, like, given some credit, he has been playing okay. He's a good player, though now they're ranked number 1 in the world, and they sort of been quite stable at least. So, and I mean, you have to talk about ZywOo in this context, right? You cannot get away from it. And he has actually also stated, Alex, which I really like, that he really wants to prove that he can be a good player without ZywOo. And I do think he sort of needs to prove it because, like, when he left, as I said, yeah, they're now the number 1 team in the world.
Yeah, it's just a hard one because people are always going to be pointing in that direction, right? But the team will have to be made up completely differently because before, and I know that the Vitality guys didn't like it because they made it very clear in interviews that they didn't like it, but a lot of their gameplay was setting up ZywOo so ZywOo could do ZywOo things, right? And they're not going to have somebody of ZywOo's caliber. There's only a few ZywOos out there, and I'd say it's him and Simple, and then you have every other player in the world, right? So unless they're planning on buying Simple in Cloud9, I don't know what kind of in-game leadership style we'll even see from Alex, because he still want to be setting up his star players. That's always be the way, but it's not going to be that same level of potency. You're not going to have a guy running up banana with an AWP on match point or in overtime and killing 4 people and winning you the round single-handedly. I don't think that's going to be happening on a regular basis.
You might have that, like that part you might get with woxic, to be honest. Like the other parts of ZywOo's game, not that much.
Sure. All right. Well, let's
not the consistent level.
Yeah.
Let's move forward to my favorite retirement home, who are trying to come out and be more like a hospice.
Can you explain the joke from the start of the show? Because I think a lot of people don't understand it, and they might take it like a like the wrong way, right?
The retirement
First,
home.
okay, go
No,
ahead.
you
Go ahead.
said
About euthanasia.
Right? Yeah, that was the joke.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Is euthanasia legal in Sweden? It probably is. You guys are pretty forward thinkers over there. Do you want me to explain the joke, Prof? It's going to lose its potency if I do that.
Just leave it. People
Will
just
Google
there
the word and
something
they'll understand if they don't know what that is. So
Okay. So Xizt and Kjaerbye have been, let's say, let go. I'm sure that their statements will read that it was something mutual. I would say that if I was Dignitas, I did my marketing stunt. We were popular for about 12 hours, and then we need to now win. So they need to get in some more players to bolster their firepower. Now for the remaining 3, Halzerk, yes, great, amazing. f0rest, fantastic. I still think he is more than a serviceable player. I still think f0rest is a fantastic individual. And then the third will be Freiburg, who I'm sure, right, like just hear me out for a second. I'm sure old Frib is going to be doing more than just playing. I think old Fribby boy might even be doing a bit of in-game leading, because that would make a lot of sense. He did a little bit over there with Heroic. It feels like he is actually probably the one out of Xizt, Freiburg, and Kjaerbye in recent times to have put the most effort into relearning the way that the game is being approached in the modern era, and probably could be a very serviceable in-game leader who has no issues doing the leading from the front of the pack, finding space, helping with those mid-round calls. So that's the 3 that they're left with. Brett, the 2 having Kjaerbye and Xizt go, do you think that it was inevitable that the old boys would go from this Dignitas roster, or do you think they'd be there just for a while and do the marketing stunt?
Yeah, I'm just maybe as confused as you are about this team in general. Like the first when I heard f0rest going there, I sort of like, okay, this is sort of a marketing thing. They just want to play some CS, have fun, go with it. But now when they do this move, it's all okay. I'm not gonna. Of course, they're trying to win, but were you actually trying to like get into top 10? Like really? Because then even if they make this change, this is the best change if they want to change 2 players. I think I completely agree on your points. I think Freiburg should be the IGL. f0rest can still play, and Halzerk is a talent. He could definitely be in any top 15 teams. Though it's just, are they serious about getting into the top 10? Like I just want to know what Dignitas' goal is here. Like, what are they trying to achieve before? Like, who are they going to pick as a player? Because are they really trying to get into the top 10? Then they need to change more players. It's very hard for me to understand what's going on.
So you think
even their statement read something like, they didn't say they were disappointed by the results. They said the fans were disappointed by the results. So from one way they were expecting this, but then it turned out like the fans don't really want you to be number 45 in the world and play like loot bet cups and lose in the quarterfinals or something. Fans don't really like that, even if you have f0rest and get right in the team. So they're like, yeah, this is, as you're saying, the marketing stunt didn't work as well as they hoped.
Well, they would have sold a bunch of jerseys in the beginning, so it definitely worked in the beginning. But now,
I mean, to be fair, I feel like from all the announcements and stuff like that, I feel like they did think it was at least going to be good, right? At least it was going to be a decent team. And to be fair, I thought they would like come close to like a top 20, or something like that, and they had to hover around there. And that probably was their peak. I don't think anywhere close.
That? Obvious fanboy right here.
31 is their peak. So it's like, like an okay team. It's nothing that's going to break out into the top 10 like Threat said. It's just nothing. And that's kind of what I expected. I just thought they were going to come a little bit closer to the top 20. Obviously, they were hit by this online period, and that just takes away from all their experience and stuff like that. They didn't get to play any lands as far as I remember. So just with that all in mind, is just this team came at the wrong time.
Flashpoint with Guardian.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But
obviously that didn't work out, and when they had to, literally they didn't have their best player in that tournament.
Guardian back to Dignitas. What do you reckon, boys?
you were the
problem is they
hammering on that again.
That's the only problem.
Yeah, that would be a weird transition.
Oh dear. Okay, so
Halzerk to rifle.
Yep.
Guardian up.
Okay, well we're ruining the team even more now.
Or they do KNG Fallen.
Is there anybody
the team.
Is there anybody there who we think could join the roster? Like at the moment, if we had to pick from, like, we obviously don't have a list of free agents, but we know that there's a lot of moving going on right now, right? I know that.
Are they going international, or are they staying like Swedish speaking?
I would say they're better off probably staying European based anyway, right? Like at least within the Nordics. let's not go too crazy. Let's not fucking go too far outside of the box.
Maybe Thread knows a little bit more about the Swedish scene. I have no idea who else is down.
But this sort of gets back to my point where what are they trying to do? Because I don't think any new talent wants to join them.
Oh shit!
This is their well, okay. If they were obviously trying and getting to the top 10, like sure, but are they really doing that? And it's not that they. I mean, if they bring in a talent, of course, f0rest would be better than the talent. Like it's not that they're absolute shit. I actually expected more of them when they started this lineup. I thought maybe they could even get into the top 20, like with the experience. So they actually underperformed over my expectations, though. Yeah, it's hard to see them picking up a talent, which means they're probably going to pick up maybe not Guardian, but
I have a name. I have a name.
Oh, go ahead,
Dennis.
Anyway, we'll be moving on to the next topic now. Mad Lions swap to players. What's going on with Mad Lions? Prof, you wrote the news. What's this about?
I mean, nothing officially yet, but the report was that they're signing 2 players from Existence, which was the old Copenhagen Flames lineup, right? So the Danish lineup. And they want to allegedly replace Asilian and Innocent, who they signed a month ago.
That's
That's the news.
It makes
no fucking sense.
It makes sense. Look, it makes sense if it happened a month and a half ago before they got Innocent.
Yes, it would make sense then. But
why did they ruin everything?
Imagine
transitioning
to an international roster.
Prof.
Speaking in English, figuring out all of the callouts, and then the next day, fuck this shit.
No, but go further back. Go further back to them replacing Hunden. Those dumb fucking cunts. Why? He would never be banned now if that didn't happen. He would still be playing and Mad Lions would still be okay and everything would be fine. And fucking Acol would be AWPing people and Bubsky wouldn't be over there on Astralis as the 7th man who's never going to play. None of this would have ever happened. Why did they get Asilian? He didn't even frag any better. He didn't. Statistically speaking, I don't think he fragged any better at all. Not even at all.
I think he did. I think he did, but not by a significant amount.
Yeah, well, I'm actually on board here with Chad. So with Hunden, I think if they really wanted to break into top 10, top 5, maybe they needed to replace him. Though they need a proper replacement first. Because he was such a big part of that team. Like he was the leader, and obviously you could see what he could do as a coach in Heroic. If you forget about the cheating thing.
Oh shit. Oh my god.
You know what's funny about this? It's just like one of those scenarios that you were talking about. You know, you get beaten by the number 2 team in your country, and you just steal what their best player just to make sure you stay on top. They literally just lost to Existence in their last match 3 weeks ago.
Oh no.
They played I don't know, but 12 series or something. First 2 series, literally one day after they got Asilian, they lost the DreamHack summer or whatever it was after the break. Then they played Cologne, beat Mousesports, lost to
Flashpoint.
OG. What are we talking about?
You were forgetting Flashpoint.
No, I'm talking about since signing Innocent, not Asilian.
Oh, okay. Fair
literally played 10 games. Lost to the first tournament was shit. Okay, they had 1 day of practice. Let's put it aside. Cologne, they beat one team, they lost to another team, didn't get to the playoffs, maybe could have, who knows. And then literally played one online cup, lost to Existence. We lost to a Danish team, kicked 2 guys instantly. Go. That's it. So I don't know what the fuck is going on here.
Okay.
This doesn't make any sense. Seems like a complete mess. Just complete.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It seems like a mess. So, I mean, in some way, it makes sense to change something because it is a mess. But then I don't know if it's a lack of leadership or what's going on there because it just seems so messy with them right now.
I'm keeping Shush and I'm keeping Acol and I'm probably then getting on the phone to North and I'm saying, look, surely you have 1 good player or something that we can have, and then we're trying to make another Danish team and we're hoping it's not shit, right? Because North right now, not great. Mad Lions, not great.
Hurts my heart to see Boobski on the bench. Not playing.
I want to see him playing, dude. He's a great player.
I don't blame Astralis at all. I think Estag fits better, but it's bullshit, man.
That's the thing. if they're using it to have the players like cycle through to help deal with the burnout or help deal with like fatigue and that kind of stuff, then yeah, he'll get a shot. Like he'll obviously have chances to play. But if like this happens, like Zipex hasn't even looked like he's going to make a return at all. Like if you're Zipex now and you're watching,
has kind of, but there's just been such confusing messaging from that camp. To be honest, Zipex fucking writes on Instagram, see you soon on the server, and then they put in their RMR lineup, which doesn't include Zipex, which means he can't play there. So he's going to be out for another 2 months. So this is just such confusing messaging to me from Astralis that I don't even know.
The thing that just gets me about all of these things, especially the Mad Lions one, is they worked so hard with the 5 that they had, and they've all come up together through the ranks, and they've been playing all the Counter-Strike, the tier 3s, the tier 2s, they're cracking into the tier 1s, they start making all the upsets, and then they immediately set their eye on wanting to be the best fucking thing since sliced bread, and replaced. I'm going obviously way too far back.
What you're actually missing in this, I think if you read the Cloud9, the Jack at the end interview as well, about the situation after they won the A-League major, and from the outside we all think like, oh, they must be happy, everything's great in the camp. But no, they literally like on the way to the hotel they were already like, we need to kick some people. Not literally, but they're unhappy.
They wanted to get Sean to coach after they'd won the major. Like I'd hear all these rumors and shit. They wanted to get old boy Gez to coach after they'd won the major.
I think if that was the only thing, that would be great, but it probably wasn't. It was like players being unhappy.
There's no way that was it.
Their recognition in the victory or whatever the fuck. So that was happening there. So when you think about like someone like Mad Lions or Tricked before, you think, oh, they're making it up and they must be happy and everything's great, but things weren't great in Mad Lions when they reached their peak, when they qualified, when they won whatever, when they broke into top 15 for the first time. It was just waiting for the first fuck up to kick the guy that you hated during the good times, right?
Sure.
So that's what happened.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's keep it moving because we've got the blast restructuring of the prize pools. Who wants to say this? Prof or Strike? I need you to explain this to me like I'm a 3-year-old.
I don't remember the exact figures, so
don't worry about the figures.
I wrote it, so I can. Yeah,
the figures are less important than the reason for the restructuring, right?
The reason, I don't know the actual reason. What was reported was coronavirus. It didn't even say because of the coronavirus. That's why you have a PR expert. It just says coronavirus is happening. Also, we are restructuring the prize pool. So then they hope others will just like write it because of the coronavirus, but it's kind of didn't really say that. All in all, the teams will get a lot more money directly from Blast than they did before. They'll get 47, like from today until the end of 2021. Blast has three seasons, so they have like the fall one, the spring one, and the fall one again. They cut the prize pool by 47% overall. Not maybe 47, about 40% overall, and all of that money will go to the teams directly instead of into the prize pool. That's
like a participation fee, just to clarify.
So yeah, and participation fee is not being paid by the teams, but to the teams. That can also be confusing.
So just so everybody can keep this clear, there's a difference between the team and the players. The entity being the team being your brand, and the players, assumably the players won't see that money, right? That money you're talking about. Well, they will because they get paid.
They'll get it through the salary, right?
Yes.
And the difference between the prize pool is the prize pool doesn't go to the organization. It goes maybe in a smaller percentage, maybe max 20%. I don't know the exact. I wasn't in a team.
Tends to be the trend that it's like 100% usually goes to players.
0 to 20%, and then the 80 to 100% is between the players, coach, and maybe some other stuff, whatever. Threat can confirm that's more or less what it is like.
Sort of. I think that's how it works for most teams around that.
Yeah, so that's why they move the money from the prize pools to the teams, and the idea is like it's coronavirus time. We don't have lands. Teams can monetize, and they have a lot of expenses, backroom staff, all of these like marketing, whatever, just paying salaries, right? So they want to help the teams, and essentially they are partnered with the teams. So there is also a bit of a talking point there. Who is making the call? Is it Blast? Or is it the partner teams that are actually making this call? Who is benefiting? Obviously, it's the teams. Yeah, that's more or less the whole story, right?
Okay, so all in all, I'm not sure that we have too much to dive into with this topic right here, because we're about to get into a topic that is probably going to jump into most of this. Strike,
well, I mean,
yeah,
there was like a whole lot of, well, maybe you can say backlash, but obviously there was a lot of response from the CSPPA about this.
Oh, that's
which
funny.
We can discuss for sure, just because. Okay, this is something that I said on Twitter, right? Already, so I'm just going to repeat that same point. Essentially, like, people were kind of up in arms, or the CSPPA was kind of up in arms about the players not being consulted in this. First of all, imagine that conversation going down, right, between the teams, the organizations, and the players. Who the organization just goes, so players, we're just going to count like 47% of the prize money from the tournament, right? Are you happy with that? So, like, obviously, you know how that conversation would go. You don't want to do that. So that's the first thing. Like, as you have to take this from the organizational point of view, they're just not gonna talk to the players about this. They're just gonna present this as a done deal. And secondly, people were blaming Blast for this in the first place, even though Blast should not be responsible towards the players in this way at all. It's just obviously it's just about the Blast made this partnership with the teams, with the organizations, I should say, just to be clear on the terminology, who then have their own deals with the players. They then deal with how much salary their players could get, how the prize pool gets distributed if they get a part of it. So it's down to the players to make the deals with their teams about if this kind of things happens, how are we going to be
compensated?
Compensated, exactly. So, like, the connection between Blast and players, it's non-existent. The CSPPA should not be mad about Blast. They should, if anybody, they should just place the blame on the organizations who probably went to Blast with this in the first place, because they're the ones who benefit from this the most, right?
Like, it doesn't make sense that Blast would just come up on their own and say, like, we'll pay out the same amount of money just to different people. Like, what do they get from that? And we'll also take all of the bad PR because we were cutting the prize pool, and all of our events will be less prestigious. And as well, for the cool CSPPA ranking, they'll be worth less because now they aren't like $250,000+ events or whatever, however that works. So cool.
But this is just Blast, or like, as a response, this is Blast's way of just making sure their teams don't tank, right? Just to make sure that the teams that they partnered with stay afloat, essentially, during this time. This is basically what I'm getting from this. And obviously, like, it could have come from the organizations, it could have come from like an idea from Blast, but essentially that's what it is. They're just making sure that their league stays alive by, compensating the organizations a little bit more than the players. So I think from a business perspective, this makes perfect sense from both the organizations and Blast. So I don't really get where this backlash is coming from.
Yeah, Threat, do you have anything on this one here, or do you want to keep it moving?
Yeah, we can keep it moving. I'm trying to just avoid politics.
Yeah, no, look, we're about to get into a bunch of politics, mate, so you can't avoid them for too long. We're going to get stuck into the scheduling. Now, I'm going to probably have a mental breakdown or two here, guys. So just...
What else is new?
Strap yourself in. Get ready for some angry Chad. So I have actively, on this show and through my Twitter, tried to, as many times as possible, bring up the question of how much Counter-Strike should these pros be playing? How much Counter-Strike should they be putting on down in a year? Now, there is no answer to this question that is sustainable in the sense of we don't have a League of Legends circuit, or we're not a fucking Dota with the TI and then everybody can skip every other event around the TI, just the ones they need to qualify and shit. We have a much different set of circumstances around our video game. And I don't even know where to begin with explaining this stuff for everybody, because I've been talking to a lot of players recently in DMs and trying to get them to understand the situation. Now, right now, the fact that we have Cologne into Pro League, into New York, into Blast, into Beijing, into whatever the fuck is coming, is complete and utter bullshit. And at no point would I ever try and defend the fact that the schedule right now is good. However, there's a reason that events have had to go from being a week long to 2 weeks long, or like Pro League was always going to be a month long. Pro League's always going to be a month long. That's just what's going to happen. But like New York would have been a week long event, right? If we didn't have to fucking have COVID. Beijing would have been a week long event if we didn't have COVID. Cologne would have been a week long event if we didn't have COVID. But all these things have been made longer. Now let me try and explain this from a standpoint where I'm at, and let's see if it helps people or not. If you're a tournament organizer like an ESL or a Blast or a Flashpoint or all these things, Flashpoint's probably a bad example because they only really started this year and I don't know their sponsorship stuff as well. But if you're some of these companies, you sell your sponsorships at the start of the year, right? You're doing those quite early on. You're pitching what you're going to have for almost the whole year. And now if I'm a fucking DHL or an Intel or a Vorsteiner or any of these companies who are sponsoring these events and COVID happens, there's going to have to be some renegotiation on what is the value for money is. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you as a fucking fact that when you little motherfuckers go to the events and you watch your players, the number one thing that you give on feedback to these tournaments about going to a live events is that you like seeing the players. You like the signing sessions. You like being able to visually see them. That's what you like the most. That's the biggest reason you go to events. It makes sense, right? That's why we go to events anyway. So the players are in the same place, playing in the same venue, all that kind of bullshit. That's the thing you like the most. So that would be, in my mind, the highest value. So when people aren't going to tournaments, meaning they're not buying the fucking jerseys, they're not going to the little side booths that G2 are putting on and shit, and fucking Red Bull, for example, is getting their value out of Kenny because he goes to the booth and then a bunch more fans come to the booth, and Red Bull's getting better foot traffic through the door. So they're now getting more numbers so they can send those metrics off. My point here is, at home, the only value that the players have, other than simple Astralis and maybe a handful of other good players, they can stream or they can hold their own brand value because they're a big deal in their own country, right? They physically have brand power. The rest of you have none. You have zero. When you are not playing an official game, you offer nothing to your organization, right? That sounds terrible, but it's true because you're either terrible at interviews because you don't want to do them, you don't have any social media presence, you're not doing what Apex is doing and building a YouTube channel or some shit. There's a lot of players who aren't doing those things. So you have offer no brand value to your organization, who now, during COVID, I don't understand if you guys understand, like the COVID situation that's going on, players. Let's think about this for a second. The camera people who go to events as freelancers, the makeup artists, the people who build the venues, they don't have a fucking job right now. And right now, with all of these factors coming together, I'm all over the place here. But my point is, right now, there is going to be more Counter-Strike. And I don't want to, I get it shit. It's shit for me trying to sell a fucking NiP versus Vitality game for the 5th time in 2 weeks. No one gives a fuck, right? But the problem is, we are trying to keep the sponsors happy, to keep the money coming through the door, to keep your 30,000 a month paychecks coming. So you got a couple of options here. We can either pay you less and have less tournaments, because that's what's going to happen. We can't pay you the same amount of money for less value. We're trying to find your value in coronavirus times, because your value, we can't quantify it because we never fucking been here before. So we're all trying to work it out. And if it means you have to play a game every second day when you're in your home, probably with your family, unless you're 100 Thieves or unless you're some motherfucker who lives away from your family, even completely dedicated your life to this, then I don't understand how in a 24-hour day, there is not enough time for you to balance your fucking life, right? I used to work a job as a plumber full time. I would work every day. I would be out there in the sun, digging my fucking holes in 40-degree heat. I'd come home and I'd still practice Counter-Strike with my truck driver teammate, my carpenter teammate, and the other 2 motherfuckers who were studying full-time. And then we would still have time to go see our girlfriends and our fucking family, and we weren't getting paid 30,000 euros a month. I do not understand where this is coming from. It is shit. It is shit. There's too many games. I am with you. There's too many games. But this is a right now problem. This is not a forever problem. This is a right now problem. So can we just fucking take a deep breath and understand that you are super lucky to still have this? And I'm not comparing you to a 9-to-5 job, because what you do isn't. And this is why you should be putting in as much effort as you possibly fucking can, because it is a competitive discipline. Do you think that fucking Nadal or Federer or fucking McGregor or all these cunts go, oh, well, I want to have my 2 days off a week to have beers? They go, I want to be the best motherfucker at what I do. And they dedicate themselves to it all the time. And I don't want you to be burnt out. And I don't want you to have mental health issues. I don't want any of those things. So if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you're mentally ill like me, and all you want to do is talk about Counter-Strike for 9 weeks straight because you have nowhere else to be and work 7 days a week, do that. If you want to be like Blame F and play Counter-Strike for 12 to 14 hours a day, lift your weights, eat your food, fucking watch more demos, and be a crazy motherfucker about CS, do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But just don't fucking complain, because you've got it good. You have it good. Fuck, I'm mad. Someone say something.
Yeah, well, I do completely agree with you. I think the complaining is the worst part here, because you tend to say, oh, you have 30K salary, yada, 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 and you cannot compare to other occupations. But okay, Corona is fucking global. It affects everyone. So you sort of have to compare how it affects you compared to other people in the world, right? People are losing their job. People are dying, literally. So that you have to work more. I completely agree about this. It's hard. Like, it's not fun. I don't enjoy playing this many tournaments, but I fucking have to do it. And it's just like a good lesson in life in general. Like, okay, if something really bad happens, it's probably going to get tough, and show some character. Like, okay, maybe look at this as an opportunity. Okay, how do I actually handle a tough situation like this? And this might go on for another year.
Yeah.
But think of it like this. Think 5 years in the future, and then you think about, oh, you remember the 2 Corona years, and think about, okay, how do I want to look back and how I handled those 2 years? Did I just complain all the time, or could I be the one that I just fucking pushed through it? I just had to keep going, and maybe, I don't know, if you have kids someday, you can like talk about it and be very proud about it. Because I completely agree. The entire thing where there's so much complaining, and that sort of adds to the entire narrative that is really hard. And that, I actually think that's one of the reasons why people get, I don't want to use the word burnout because I think it's too harsh, but they're getting very, very tired, right? Because everyone is saying, oh, talking about burnout. Am I getting burned out? I read that player got burned out. And it just adds to it.
Yeah, it's a weird cycle, right? But the thing that I am trying to look for here, and we've had this discussion, Striker, many times on the show, and I don't know if you've put any more thought into it, but it's what is the correct answer? Like, like right now is shit. Like, we all know that, and none of us want to be here. And I tried to allude to some of the reasons as to why we're in the mess we're in right now. But like, what is the ideal answer? What do you think like Counter-Strike players should be? How many? Let's put it this way: how many officials in a month should CS players be playing for their value? Because it's not going to ever be like the Champions League in football, or the fucking what's the one in the UK? The Premier League. I don't know sports, guys. But like, it's never going to be where they have a set amount of matches, and we know that they have a set amount of value attributed to that, because it's just Counter-Strike's not that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is just, obviously you can think about it more and more, but it's going to be individual. Like, some people will obviously prefer it this way, some people prefer it that way. I think the bigger problem that we're facing, more than players playing too much, is fans having too much Counter-Strike, because essentially what this does in the long term, and I think I don't know how that's been reflected in the numbers, to be fair. I don't actually have any data on this to support this idea. But obviously, the longer this happens, the more fans we will lose, just because obviously with tournaments being one after another, it just detracts so much excitement from each one of those tournaments. And so fans will stop caring about, okay, so if I skip this match, there's just going to be another one in a couple of days, right? Even the same matchup as we saw with like NiP Vitality playing each other 5 times in 3 months or whatever it was, something like that. So obviously, like, if this keeps happening for too long, we're just going to bleed fans, just because they're going to stop being interested in the game. So I think that's the biggest problem that we're facing, rather than people playing too much individually, individual players, playing too much.
So, Prof, are you in agreement that it's too much CS at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but the issue I see, of course, I can just speculate at this point, but also there are a couple of examples that we can point to. It's not like if we had like less teams at these top events, or like, let's say, the online Cologne or online Pro League or whatever, if we had like 12 of the best European teams, then the other teams just wouldn't play anything. Like, we saw all of these teams that don't get invited are like, okay, now I need to grind other tournaments to get points. So then they play all of the loot bets, they play every other tournament that's available, right? So what can you actually do? It's not like the players wouldn't play. They would still go out and play other stuff. It's only if you don't have any events at all, then maybe Astralis, maybe like some of these top 5-10 teams wouldn't actually go and play lower tier events, but everyone else would have to do it. And then someone would say, oh, this is the problem with the ranking. But it's not the problem of the ranking. Ranking just ranks what is being played. It's a problem of the system being as it is, and especially like no LAN matches, no LAN events happening. There is no difference almost between online Cologne and the Lootbet Cup. It's all online, right? It's different for the ranking as well. It's not counted the same, but mentally for the players, it's just like, it's just another match. Why wouldn't I play more? So I don't know. There's not like a simple thing that's going to be fixing this. And I think there's a lot of like disingenuity in general about, oh, if we just did this, then everything would be fixed. But people don't even think about what they would do if that was like that. Like, how would you actually approach it?
They just say it's too much, right?
Yeah,
they don't,
that's the...
Yeah. It just also goes back to what you said. Like, if you want to be the best in the world at something, you're going to have to put in like shitloads amounts of time. Like, you're not going to have the time that you would want to have with your girlfriend, with your family, or whatever. You're not going to have the free time that you want if you want to be the best in the world at something. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
It's like someone is always going to be playing more. And then if you want to catch up, then maybe you get burnout, maybe you don't. But like, is someone going to go and start complaining that Cristiano Ronaldo is like practicing 3 times a day, waking up at 6 a.m., not drinking alcohol, having like model girlfriends, but obviously just having sex once a month, so he has like physical fitness? Like, is someone saying that? No, he's not. So you can't say that to anyone else. It's just like someone is going to push the boundaries of what is capable, because as you, SPUNJ, said, he's not, in a way, he's mentally unstable. He's not. But he's not normal either. Like, no one wants to do work all the time. So
but that's I use that obviously in a way to compare it to normal. Like, and that's what the players are trying to compare their lives to now, is to trying to be like you're professional sports player, so your life is not normal.
Exactly. So comparing it to a 9-to-5 job is kind of, it's dumb. It's not the same, and you're also getting paid above average salary in any of these countries that they're living in, especially if you're like in a country like mine, then you're living like you're paid more than a fucking president probably in Croatia. So what the fuck are you actually asking for? And you can move to Croatia and live better than the president here.
Or move to Malta, don't pay any tax, it's good too. But look, the key thing here is, like, everybody is smart enough to acknowledge there's too much Counter-Strike on, because what we're doing is we're shooting ourselves in the foot for the future of the growth of the game. But this is the world we're in right now to keep our heads above water. That's the way I want everybody to look at this current situation. We are keeping our heads above water. That's what we are doing. There's a chain restaurant here. You guys maybe have heard about it. In Cologne, well, there's a place called Vapiano's. They have it in the world. It's like a fucking Italian joint. They're all closed down now. They're closed because they couldn't get enough business through the door during coronavirus, right? They're closed.
Fucking God, one of the worst restaurants.
It was shit. Ever. It was shit. No one said it was good. But my point here is that doesn't exist anymore. So like, I'm looking at this from the option of, if we can't now because we're in the thick of it. Shit's been sold. People need to get there's television networks who need to get their minutes watched. They have those slots and all that shit. This is happening now. If the fact that a player from a team with 7 players still complained against me in a tweet the other day actually fucking blew my mind. They added 2 extra players to your roster for this whole purpose, dude. Right? We don't have time to spend with our girlfriends and family and friends. You get 2 months off a year, right? You get 2 whole months off a year, and you're not traveling at the moment. So if you're not traveling, that means that when you're not playing, if you're playing Counter-Strike, if you're sleeping for 8 hours a day, and then for the other 16 hours, all you're doing is playing CS, you're probably living life wrong. Like, you're probably not maximizing your practice right, Threat.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing here, right? Because I do agree with you on everything, and I also think that some of these players, I don't want to use, not burned out, but they're getting close to getting burned out. And I think one of the main reasons is, I talked about this earlier, it's a combination of, I think it's very stressful for some players, even though for some players they only get really stressed when it's a LAN environment. But some players get really stressed when they're playing from home as well. And for those players, this gets a bit tougher, right? And add to that they're living in a very unhealthy way. And a very, very simple thing is they might be very bad at planning. I think just have a schedule. I promise you that would actually save a lot of us from these discussions. Like, just have a schedule, plan your time. Because, as you said, like, there are so many hours they could actually do other things, but they're so like, I'm gonna sleep to this hour, and then I have to do this, and then I have to play to 3 a.m. with my friends, because that's what I do. Then it's very, very hard to get a normal life, and then you will feel really bad because you're actually just really unhealthy.
I don't know. Yeah, go for it.
No, it's just I think a lot of it is just because we're dealing with very young people here, right? People who, in a lot of cases, didn't really have a proper job, and didn't have to work around it and figure out how to have a family life or whatever else. So it's like, I think that's a big part of the problem as well, just because they don't realize how things are otherwise, how things are for normal people. Those still have to, even though, of course, their schedule is probably going to be a little bit more lenient than a CS player who has to basically, be around like 7 days a week and fairly late into the night. But still, there are a lot of things that you learn if you first, do a normal job, 9 to 5, and then figure out how to work your life around it, right? And so
Did you
it's
do
just
a 9 to 5 job before HLTV?
For a bit, yeah.
Okay.
It's not much fun. Like, I think that the good thing of a 9 to 5 job, or like even just a regular job, I had to work a lot in between being a pro back in the CGS days and then being a pro again in the early CSGO days, right? Like, I had a bunch of different jobs. I had to work as a produce manager in a Woolworths, where I would start work at 4 a.m. in the morning and finish at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. That was for the first week. Then the second week of that month, I would start work at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and finish at 4 a.m. in the morning, right? I would switch. I worked as a plumber, like I explained, like with my old man, he wouldn't let me get away with any bullshit. I worked as an IKEA furniture assembly man, where I had to go around to people's houses and put together stuff and like learn how to talk to people. Like, I worked in jobs where I'd travel around the country selling merchandise at gigs and festivals, and you would work 18-hour days because the festivals would be like just the weekend. So you'd work 18 hours straight, and then you'd crash and you'd sleep. You do it. Like, the thing is, now I get like my current situation that ESL have provided for me in Cologne. I'm in this beautiful hotel room. It's one of the it is the nicest hotel in the entire city. They have given me a car to drive Machine, myself, and Pansy to work every day. That is the most normal I have felt since starting this job on like a full-time kind of thing. I have the ability. Today is my off day, and I choose to do this podcast because I fucking love doing this shit. But that's the thing. Like, my job is nowhere near as stressful as the players. Like, I have to go on camera, and I have to make sure that I don't say anything stupid, and I have to make sure that my quality of work doesn't drop to a level that people hate what I'm doing. But the players are obviously having to perform at the highest level, and the only thing driving the players to go work harder is the other players, right? If everybody just went, well, let's just guys, let's all chill out a bit. Let's stop coming up with new strategies. Let's all stop trying to win so hard.
50 hours of CS in 2 weeks max. Everyone above that disqualified.
You're out. You're out of the CSPPA.
Disqualified.
So the thing is, what drives them is the competition. It's the competition that drives them, right? Like, a lot of them don't even have to stream for their orgs these days. Like, what do they have to do from a content perspective?
I want to ask, because one of the things that on Twitter in these replies, players and people says like, you don't know how much stuff players have on the side, like how much practice they have. I want to ask, Threat is making a face already. What is, like, from your perspective, how busy are the players? Like, give me like a rough estimate of a week. How much do you practice?
Well, let's take a hard week then, when we're in Stockholm together, right? So that is a bit harder for the ones that doesn't live in Stockholm, but they are aware of that situation, right? So if you don't not live in Stockholm, you will have to be away, right? Just makes sense.
Yeah.
So, well, let's say start at 10, 11, and work 8 to 9 hours. Usually with a 1 or 2 hour break, so like you can get some fitness in. Yeah. So so you mean outside of playing or scrimming, or
no? I mean the break is within the 8 hours that you mentioned, or
within, let's say, the 9 hours. So this is just an issue. We have different blocks, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's say, well, it's sort of like a regular work day, right? I'd say. Then, of course, some of them choose to go to dinner together afterwards, which I really like, but it's not mandatory. So yeah, the thing here is, and I want to build on Chad's point, where he was a plumber, and I sort of grew up in the same way. Where when I was getting into esports, there were no money. I worked as a carpet salesman. I just had these very, very weird hours. It sucked, but I needed money. Right, I had no money. But if I think back to those days, and let's say NiP came to me and they gave me this offer before I was a carpet salesman, would I say yes? Like, of course I would say yes, which means I would not have these experiences, which I actually value now. So it's very key to understand that we can see why there is a problem and why they are saying this. Because I get really frustrated with players too. But what I really want is to solve these problems. So like you have to be very pragmatic about, okay, how do I actually solve this problem? Well, they have to do it, but you can sort of lend them the tools. Okay, this is how I do it. Okay, we have a schedule. The good thing about this, I think, is because a lot of these things are very easy to fix. I mean, if you're in a team and you have players whose aim is terrible, right? That's a complicated problem. Like how do you solve that? Because like, okay, one player needs a schedule and stay healthy. Well, it should be easy at least.
Yeah, I think that like that was something in the middle of the year for me. I had 2 months off because of coronavirus, right? Like I couldn't travel anywhere for the events. I'd just done a 2.5 month stint earlier with the RMR event and everything as soon as Kjaerbye had finished. And that's something that like even when I had nothing to do with my days, if I would structure my day, it would make my life like a million times better, even though I had like nothing to do. These guys have something to do. If you have structure around it, like you're going to get the most out of your day. Now, living like that isn't always fun, and needing to take time off and breaks is definitely necessary. But you can have those times where you can scale away from that. But to do something consistently for let's say like a month or 2 months straight, that's how most people like go about their days. And even people who like they have the Monday to Friday and then they have the weekends off, they're still doing shit on the weekends because they have other things that they need to do. That's when they run their errands. That's when they do the chores around the house. That's probably when they clean their house. Like I think that like life is, for us in our very, very privileged world, because like I think we are in a very we do entertainment, right? We do a competitive discipline, which is entertainment as a career, which is a great space to be in. The fact that we have this space is amazing. I'm not saying that people shouldn't get paid more or whatever. I'm trying to get paid more all the time, but that we have this amazing opportunity in front of us, and if we just handled it the right way, that we could make even more out of it. Now, I want to quickly transition this conversation down to the extended rosters threat, because we obviously have you here, and I would be curious to know if you'd thought about adding a sixth member, especially with this Nork situation. Was there any thought about like getting Olaf on the phone and say, hey, do you want to come be a stand-in until you want to be our sixth man or something, anything like that?
Sure. I mean, of course, you have to go through these things when you're put into this situation. Then I don't know if it would be probably a temporary solution during Corona times. I don't know what Astralis and those other teams are up to. Maybe they just try to preemptively get a better solution when you have these tournaments that are playing day to day. But absolutely, like that could definitely be a solution if this keeps going. Let's say it keeps going for, I don't know, 18 more months. Yeah, sure, we would need to find another solution.
Do you think it's like just a... Do you think this is just something that we would happen, because we've had a discussion a lot on the podcast about the sixth and seventh men, so that they are just doing now because of the coronavirus situation? Or do you think it's something that they're actually considering keeping in the future? Because I can see the positives of it now, like with all these tournaments back to back. It also, like, imagine the match days when Astralis were playing and nobody knew who Astralis was using until like a couple of hours before the game. Like we spoke to Blame F in one of the post-game interviews. We were like, how did you prepare? He was like, well, we went about watched some of Glabe's old demos, and we watched the new demos with Esatag and this and that, and we tried to work out Bubsky was here, and they were trying to counter-strat for the unknown. Like, do you think that having a sixth man may help from a strategic standpoint as well as just like a burnout standpoint?
I don't know if it would really work from that standpoint. I think CS in general is more about preparing your own game, though like you should definitely try to anti-strat. I don't think that would. I think it's more about how you prepare, like in your own team, and that will become more complicated, obviously, if you have 6 players. I mean, you could do some sort of, okay, we have these 5 players on these maps, I guess. Though I guess this is something that they are still trying to figure out. And I mean, good for me that they're trying to experiment with this first.
Yeah, it's paving the way, right?
Yeah.
Giving you the options. Striker, do you think this is something which we might see more teams doing if Corona continues, adding more sixth men?
Yeah,
Mal's already kind of did it, but then that fell apart.
Yeah, I'm not totally sold that was the aim in the first place, but it who knows, maybe. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we had more people. But I feel like it's going to be more like that situation where it's an obvious, like a stand-in, like a permanent stand-in, like an actual guy who's going to sit on the bench and just come in whenever it's needed, rather than what Astralis is trying to portray with their 7-man roster, saying that they're potential. Sorry.
Everyone's going to play.
Where everyone's going to play. Obviously, it's pretty obvious that Astralis are just going to play with their main roster whenever they can, right? So I can see that happening for more teams in the future. It's just going to be a problem of getting the people to actually do it. It's just going to have to be like FPL, guys who don't really have a team already and stuff like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Valve obviously has a stance on rosters. 5 men, you go win the major with 5 people. Everyone's trying to push this agenda. I'm calling it agenda. The 6+ man agenda.
Yeah.
It's an agenda right now, especially the Astralis camp. Do you think, this is for Threat, do you think that it should remain like essentially a 5-man game? Or like, let's say Astralis has 6 men and they're using everyone else, or 7 people, and they're swapping all the time, but they go and play the major, they're limited to 5, and then these 2 guys are a part of the team. Maybe they helped anti-strat or whatever, but they can't play, so they didn't win. How do we feel about this?
I think it's impossible for me to say anything without being like very naive here, because it's a space where no one has ventured into, so no one knows. And I just want to be very clear about that. Like, no one really knows, and I have no idea, and my gut feeling would just be a complete guess if it works or not. I could see the pros, I could see the cons of both of these. I don't know. Like, currently, like, maybe I would feel more towards the 5-man thing because it's simpler. But I don't know. That's my answer.
It is a difficult one, right? Because the idea that having so many players being able to play so many different roles within a team, or having, I like the idea of having a 6th man who can also, be the content for the squad, right? But then he's probably not a player that you want to keep on the team full time. It's just somebody there to step in if someone's sick or needs a break, or they have internet issues or some shit along those lines. It's I like what Astralis are doing because we're going to see how it works. But Strike, I got another bet. Do you want to make another bet with me?
Well, it depends on what it is, man.
So I don't think that Zipex will play a game for Astralis this year.
Okay.
What do you think?
Take the bet, Striker.
Can you? I am very inclined to take this, but I'm just curious about why you think that.
I think that there is, considering how well Esotag is fitting in, and I think that Bubsky as well is probably more in shape than Zipex. That I don't know if and the issues that Astralis have had before with Zipex, that they'll bring him back.
But if he's not in form, how will he get in form if he doesn't play?
I don't know. I just have one of those feelings, Prof, where I'm trying to instigate something here.
I'm just gonna ask straight up. You don't actually know, do you?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I have no idea.
Just making sure that you haven't heard any about
no insider trading
and stuff
allowed
like that,
but,
because that would be a fixed bet, is what I would call it.
Well, I've heard some things, but I haven't heard anything that would say that he wouldn't play a game.
Okay.
I've heard some things, but I don't know what those things mean. So, like, you can think about it. We can talk. He wouldn't have played before next episode, so we can talk about it there.
But I feel like at this point, I'm inclined to say that he's gonna come back, just because of the see you on the server soon and stuff like that. I feel like he wouldn't say that unless he knew that he was going to be able to come back,
I would just think,
I feel like
with a 7-man roster, he's currently in the 7th slot. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think that's the case.
You don't think so?
I feel like it's too early to call that, just because with Esotag, with this actual lineup where Bobsky's in the 6th spot, and they just decided on S attack to fit in a little bit better, which seems to be the case. To be fair, they've been doing really well, but it's just one tournament where they've played with him. So I feel like it's a little bit early for them to say, okay, this is the lineup that we're going to stick with until the end of the year.
All right. Well, we'll wait. We'll wait till the next episode.
The thing is, like, at the end of the year, as we think things are going to happen, we're actually going to get a LAN.
Yeah.
So I feel like it'll depend on whether they're going to be able to bring ZipX back in time for that, essentially. At this point, we know that ZipX is not going to play the RMR, so it's pretty, which is going to be played until the beginning of November.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to check on that. DreamHack Open Fall is 15th of October to 25th of October. So let's say until the beginning of November. So if he comes back after the RMR event, he has a month to get back into shape, which I feel like is a decent amount of time.
I thought he was already back though.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but he's definitely not put in. They definitely submitted a lineup without him. They submitted a lineup with S-Attack for that team for that tournament.
Okay.
So they, as far as I know, they can't just bring him back in the middle of it without risking the 20% thing. Even without it, I feel like I don't think they can actually bring him into. They can just swap the coach into the lineup, as we saw with what happened with North. There you go. So that means he's definitely not coming back until the end of October, unless somehow ZipX is going to play some Pro League matches now. And
I guess he could still do that.
They could, but I just don't see that happen since he's not going to play the RMR for sure.
Would be funny if ZipNix plays this week, and they're not playing Europe
next
week.
Next week is next week. Yeah, this week's South America and North America.
You know what I'm saying? It's pretty likely that he's going to be out until the end of October at the least, right? But he's then going to have a month and a half until.
Are you taking the bet or are you not?
I can wait till next week. He won't have played before next week anyway, so we can wait. We can hold off.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we could hear something until then, but it's probably unlikely, just because, like I said, there's a month until until he can come back, so it's probably unlikely that we're going to hear anything until then. So I'm inclined to take it, but I'm gonna take my time with this because I can see the logic. I just don't think that's the thinking that he's just permanently in the 7th spot or something. I think it's just the worry that he might not be in 100% shape in time for that line, which is probably going to be a big focus for Astralis.
Sure.
That's the logic that I see there.
Someone in chat saying Striker is already PMing ZipNix to find out.
All right, so what do we want to the next subheading here? Lucas, can you bring up that calendar that I made before? So what we want to talk about here, now this is obviously for next year, assuming we go back to LAN, assuming everything goes back to it was. Now, we need to be able to have a conversation, guys, about what makes sense from a calendar perspective. And we're obviously only talking about the tier 1 teams here. We're not talking about all of the teams because everybody's obviously not going to play all the exact same events. And there's going to be smaller events. There's going to be DreamHack Opens. There's going to be these online cups. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening all the time. So what I've tried to, just bring it up whenever you want, Lucas, what I've tried to visualize here for everybody is just almost in my mind for tier 1 Counter-Strike, right, to continue the narratives throughout the year so it isn't too fucking packed on out, just what I think kind of makes sense. Now, I've been very broad with a lot of this stuff. Let me explain it. So the start, the little crosses you see in January, that's the player break up until we know it, right? The player break ends on the 17th of January in 2021. So that means everybody's back to work on the 18th. So usually what we've had after a lot of these player breaks is an event straight in afterwards, a couple of days. So this is just my little brainchild here of what would make sense, and we can talk through what you guys would think would change in a moment, but I want to explain this to the viewer. So then following that, as of the 25th of January, I'd have the first week-long tournament, whatever it is, kicking off. I don't care who's running it, it doesn't matter what it is, but that's normally how long our tournaments run for, right? Like an ESL1 Cologne or a Sydney or a traditional Blast event or whatever. Well, they're usually weekends, but you get my point. A week-long event, we get the 16 teams, we have the group stages, we have the finals, all that shit. Then we have 2 weeks off. Then we do another one of those events. So now we've had a 2-week breathing period. People get to fly home, they get to relax, they get to practice, they get to, have a couple of down days, whatever. Same thing, we have another week off, and then we do a long-form league. So whether it's your Flashpoint, whether it's your Blast, whether it's your Pro League, for a month of March, it's a long form, because I think we need different formats and things, right? So imagine the first 2 are our traditional, we've got our groups, they're just normal GSL groups, or they're normal double, like single limb bracket, whatever. They're just a normal group. Then we move into like we're having with Pro League right now, which is a round robin group. I like the fact it's different. I like the fact we get to see all the teams play. It's something a little bit more unusual. Then you go into the finals format, which this time around we're doing double elimination. I don't mind that. It's a different format. Then, we have another week and a half off. We have another tournament. Then we have the majors. The majors are meant to be in May, right? I did get that right. It's meant to be May and November.
Yeah, that's the plan.
But I've given them a whole month.
What was the plan?
So assuming that we go back to normal, I've given the majors an entire month of May and November for the qualifiers, for all the minors bullshit, for all of that. Let's just say it takes up the entire month of May and the entire month of November. Then we keep moving forward. We have another tournament. I've put a longer one in there because the SO1 Cologne's a big one. So let's just say it goes a little bit longer. We got 2 tournaments before the player break. All right. We have another player break. That's cool. Now the players have had in a 8-month span, they've had 2 months of holidays, right? That's how it's going to work in 12. If you had enough time after, like I've shown here again, if you have enough time after the player break and you don't put a tournament straight on the other side of it, the players can actually take 2 to 3, even 4 weeks in some occasions in the tier 1 teams actual time off. And then they can give themselves like a soft week of just FPL, and then they can have a proper week of practice before they get back into it. Another tournament, another decent sized one, then a week and a half off, back into another long form league. So we all get all the matches, we get to see everybody. Then we have another tournament, then we have another major month, then we have another tournament, then it's end of the year and the player break kicks off again. So here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I have 8 decent standalone size stadium tournaments. I have 2 long form leagues, like let's say the Pro League's Flashpoints Blasts, and then I have 2 majors. That seems like a lot of Counter-Strike already, don't you think, Threat?
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. And as I said earlier, this is the sort of format that I really enjoy, where it's a week long. I think a week is the perfect length of a tournament. I understand the need for, let's say, round robin, even though I personally dislike it. I understand that, okay, that actually gives the chance to lesser teams to play more matches, because you have to finish all the matches. This actually does make a lot of sense. Maybe even like for the players, this would be great. I mean, for the scene, I would almost consider it to be too many tournaments for oversaturation. That's the only thing I would have against it. But when it comes to player burnout, etc., this would be more than enough time for them to recover.
So I think here, just Prof, so you can kind of help me a little bit. There's going to be a whole circuit outside of this, right? This obviously isn't this calendar for next year. There's going to be tournaments on top of each other. There's going to be tournaments bashed up next to each other. But if you were the players and you got to pick this, and you're a tier 1 team, this is kind of where you'd be wanting to go, right?
I think this looks awesome. Like both for my money, also for viewers as well. I don't think this is too many tournaments. Like mostly one big tournament per month. Like one grand final per month, even though there could be like more matches. Let's say when we have leagues or we have the major, there's going to be more going on. Like you have a grand final and you have a few weeks off until like the next big event, and that would be amazing. That we don't have those IEM New York to DreamHack Malmo or whatever situations where you're like the champion for 2 days and then you're eliminated in the last place of the next tournament. So you have that kind of space between everything. I don't know, looks pretty cool. The issue obviously is that 18th to 24th of January is going to be like Ice Challenge, and then Navi is going to go there, and then you have, I don't know, another tournament right after that, which is going to have like the 8th and the 9th best team and stuff like that. That is just how the circuit works.
Yeah, so that is like, so just so everyone at home who's looking at this is clear, this is like a dream scenario, right? This is what, if I was a tier 1 team, if I was an Astralis, if I was an NiP, a Navi, I wouldn't want my players to be attending anything more than this. This is what I would want them to be signed up to at the start of the year, and we'd go with it. There's obviously like going to be a lot of tier 2 tournaments, right? Like we have the DreamHack Open circuit, we have those things. Now, with that in mind, where does the onus go here? Who does it fall on to make sure that these players can set something up like this? Because we know they signed the contracts with these different orgs because of the agreements, but how can, like, I have
why is this not the reality?
Essentially, how can we get to this point, right?
Yes.
What is your question? Well, the answer is somebody wins the tournament, organize a war.
Okay, so
that's essentially the only way this goes there.
Hmm?
That's literally the only way we reach that point. where there's no more any competition between the big organizers. Sure, we can have like, you know, we can still have like some tier 2 organizers like a DreamHack Open, whatever, that type of a like a lower tier circuit, and have like more of a tiered, like a organization tier list or like a tournament organizer tier list, where, you know, ESL hosts are just gonna put ESL at the top because obviously they're the biggest. So where we have the ESL hosting only like top tier tournaments, then we have DreamHack, you know, hosting only the top tier 2 tournaments, then we have, I don't know, Eden Esports, whatever it's called, hosting the tier 3 tournaments or whatever it is, you know. So I could see that happen, but like at the very top, the only way we reach this point is if one tournament organizer wins and they create this circuit.
So, but here's the thing. Let's say in the current environment, Blast were doing 2 seasons, Flashpoint were doing 2 seasons, ESL were doing 10 events, which included 2 seasons of Pro League. Starladder weren't running any events this year. There was the Ice Challenge at the start of the year. Let's say Epicenter pops up and runs one. Let's just, for argument's sake, that Starladder runs 2 or 3 different events. DreamHack Open. Let's roll the DreamHack.
Masters.
Yeah, so there's 2 DreamHack Masters and there's a whole bunch of DreamHack Opens. That's like the main tournaments we have in a year, right? And then obviously the majors. But here's the thing. People have this crazy thing that they can do, and it's like called choice, and they don't have to go to all the events, right? Threat. They can actually kind of choose which events they want to go to in some regards.
Here I have to wave the politics card.
Here we go.
And I'm the coach, so I don't have to get involved into politics.
Okay, all right. Well,
that's the second time or maybe the third time that I've seen the coach politics card from you, Threatman. Same thing happened in the interview that we did at Kjaerbye.
Yeah, okay, so if I put it like this, I think this is the dream scenario. And I do agree that someone needs to sort of win the event war or some other solution that I don't see. Though, like, the reason there is politics could, like, it's so, I don't want to be naive and say, like, oh, fuck politics, like, just do it the way it should be. Because then we almost, like, sound like the players, like, we just want to feel good, you know. There is a reason for everything here. And it is very complicated. And someone claiming, because this is sort of the thing where I want to get at. It's like someone claiming to have the one solution solves all. Like that's where I'm like, okay, you probably are very naive right now, because like no one knows.
Yeah, I understand that there's different agreements with these teams that have been signed with different TOs, and I also understand that if I'm a tournament organizer and we're getting to 2021. I'm surprised this hasn't happened earlier, to be completely honest with you. I want the gloves to come off. I actually, like, the people are like, oh, it's so shit, they're scheduled on top of each other. No. Schedule the fuck on top of each other. Let's go to war, motherfuckers. Let's stop being friendly. Why are we being friendly? We got the UFC, we got Bellator, we got ONE FC. Okay, well, that's our big boys right here. ESL, Blast, Flashpoint. Let's go to war. Let's stop being nice. You can't have everybody. Make some fucking decisions, right? ESL, schedule your shit wherever you want. Blast, you want to go over there? Shit, do it. If your contracts are stronger and you can get the big boys, go for the big boys. We can't be friendly with this anymore. I can't have players complaining about having to play too many tournaments, their organizations signing those motherfuckers up to every tournament because they want more money, and then the TOs being best friends with one another, trying to make the calendar work so that everybody can force this fucking traveling circus into each of their different fucking looking tents. How about, instead of having tents, we get some battleships, and if ESL can get Na'Vi and Astralis, and Blast can get fucking, I don't know, EG and Vitality, and Flashpoint can get their Cloud9s and let's just say 100 Thieves. Let's say and we're at war now, okay? Now then, maybe 100 Thieves might give a little bit more of a fuck, or maybe now Astralis are going to push harder for their events and the players are going to care. We're in an ESL tournament, right? And we you know, it means something to us to be in an ESL tournament. Then maybe when we get to the majors and we could build a narrative, it's like, fuck, the champions of the ESL Pro League are going up against the champions of Flashpoint Season 3. Like, let's fucking see who's better now. We got a storyline. Right now, when I see the traveling circus of EG, Liquid, Astralis, Na'Vi, everybody, oh, let's get on the plane, guys. Woo-hoo-hoo. We're going, hey, guys, we're going to play each other again. There's no storyline. You just won New York. You're on an airplane. You get to Stockholm, wherever the fuck we went, Malmo, and you lose. Great storyline.
What you essentially what you essentially want here, Chad, is the League of Legends circuit where maybe we wouldn't be regionalized this way, but we would definitely be what do you call it? Compartmentalized at least, where you have but it would be essentially the same premise. You just have like certain teams stuck into a certain, in League of Legends it's regions, and here would be like compartment where like a tournament organizer, so it would be basically a copy of the League of Legends system, just like in a different different way.
I like the fact that we can have a standalone event when we know who the champion is over a space of a week. Like, I think that's really cool. Like, I think that built up as like a fighting card, like boxing or whatever, is like a really cool. Everyone comes in, or not like like the movie The Karate Kid, where everyone signs up and they go in and they have their fucking bracket up on the board and you see them progressing. That's what I think is kind of cool about Counter-Strike. The league thing where it's drawn out and over the however many weeks they do it, I don't like that as much. I like this because let's say at ESL 1 New York we have like these 16 teams, but then at Blast whatever we have these 16 teams, and you get to see like a little bit of a different mix up. But I just think we've been friendly for way too long. Like, everyone has been friendly for so long, just giving each other the space and the calendar and everyone. But no, we'll play your event too. Don't worry, we'll be there, because I don't want to upset the fucking apple cart. But the thing is, you can't, as a team owner, make your players play in every single event. It's literally not feasible. Like, we know that, and we don't want it to be like that. So then draw the line in the sand and pick a fucking side. Like, it helps. This is why I think Flashpoint's such a cool idea, is because the the teams are the TO. They're investing in their own products. So the guys that Duncan and Monty get on their show to come and talk and do all that kind of stuff on a regular basis, they are obliged to do that because it makes their own tournament look better. Right now, all I see, well, I don't see it anymore, but when I remember seeing shit like players complaining about how shit was on events on Twitter, you're shooting yourself in the foot. If you were tied to that event, right? If you were one of ESL's boys or one of Blast boys or one of Flashpoint's boys, you're not going to be out there tweeting shit about the tournament. If things are bad, you're going to go to the people there and you're going to get it fixed, as you should in the first place. But you want to be bigging up your thing because you want the more viewership, you want the more fans, you want people to think your brand of Counter-Strike is better. And I just think that the way we fix this is through the choice, and the choice has to come from the entity of the team and the players, and they need to come up with right now, right? Imagine we're going into a whorehouse, and you're in the whorehouse. I've never been in a whorehouse. I imagine it's probably a wonderful place, but let's say that there's all the TOs, they're all lined up, right? And you get to pick. Well, that's what the teams get to do. They get to pick. Oh, ESL, they offer 8 premium events a year with this, and they're going to offer us this deal. Oh, Blast, they have 2 leagues a year. If we do the Blast one, we can also do the Flashpoint one. So maybe we'll take these 2 and we'll have a bit of a threesome, right? Like, why not make some smarter decisions instead of going, we're going to play Blast, we're going to play Flashpoint, we're going to play ESL, we're going to play we're going to play everything. Just make some fucking choices, because the TOs clearly now are trying to sign you up to the program. That's why these things exist. They exist this way because they want you. So if you have all the decision-making power, which they do, make some smart fucking decisions. Don't make the decisions which are, let's just play everything. That doesn't make any sense.
Two things. First thing is, as everything in CS, people are used to having the possibility to do everything. And as you know...
But then they complain about being burnt out.
The thing is, like, as soon as like 2 qualifiers are overlapping, especially even at this like tier 6 teams, where there are so many, at least last year when you had like all of these DreamHack Opens, all of these like qualifiers for Cologne, for whatever, shit overlapped. And when that happened, everyone was upset. And at the moment, we're in a place where everyone has to be allowed to do everything. And that's the consensus right now. I'm not saying
why?
That's good. That is just where we are. Maybe that is bad. I'm willing to accept that being bad. But we need to move slowly to what you're saying if we want to go into that world that you just described, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is competition drives innovation, and that is good. And that is what we had in CSGO from the beginning, and we had like some great strides and new stuff coming in. At the same time, how much super cool new shit did we have in the last year? I feel like we have just reached a point where it's not even feasible to go further, even in prize money or in production value or whatever. We just reached a point where we are. Maybe that then justifies going into this franchise, semi-franchise system. That
they're already kind of there, you know? Like they already have signed up to these programs.
Yeah. Lastly, the biggest issue that I have with team TOs, like tournament organizers being also organizations, is what just happened with Blast. And I'm not saying that thing was bad necessarily, but it just opens up possibilities for the players to get fucked however the teams want, right? If you pay the salary to the player, but also host the tournament, you can literally do whatever you want, and the players have no choice in anything. Which, as we figured out, we talk a lot of shit about players. Maybe that is a good thing in some ways, but in other ways, maybe not so much, right? There needs to be a balance.
Yeah, but then that's up to the players to be able to negotiate all these things, right? When this becomes more of a thing where
that's why we need like a player association that is
competent.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Look, there's no point beating around the bush with the CSPPA stuff, right? Like, let's be honest. I will just base my opinion on. I had no issues with the CSPPA previously, but once I saw the ranking come out and understood what the ranking was meant to be used for, and then look, I've said this on this show before, and I'll fucking say it again. The players are focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is the scrims that they're going to be playing in and the opponents they have coming and getting better at the game. They're not looking at the broader circuit. They're not looking at the overall picture. They're not looking at broadcasts and how to sell the story and what all that means. That's not their job. So why the fuck are we letting them have any influence on those kind of things? I'm not saying that they shouldn't get to choose, or be like, oh, this is too much. I'm physically out there trying to ask, how much Counter-Strike is too much Counter-Strike? How much do you guys want to play? How much do you think is fair? How many holidays do you want a year? I want to know.
Did you get a lot of good answers?
I get no answers from them. None of them can answer the question. None of them can answer it. Right? All I get is a complaint, and then I get these answers, which they don't go anywhere. It's like, oh, but it still shouldn't be this way. Then how should it be? Take 5 minutes out of your day just to have a little think for me, just so that I can take some information and try and help you.
The schedule that you just made, I don't think that took more than 10 minutes, but it's at least something that people can say. You can look at it and see, this is 8 events, this is 12 events in a year, this is how it looks. Try to get like some fresh idea out there, and then maybe someone can build something on it. Just like try to add to the discussion instead of just repeating everything that's been said.
I just think it's kind of ridiculous that tournament organizers are kind of at the behest of players who are the only ones who are actually benefiting from how the system is right now. They are the only ones financially stable. Maybe not on individual terms. Like, every player obviously has only a certain amount of time at the top level, right, or at a level where they can play. But as a group, players are the only ones who are financially well off compared to everybody else in the industry. So for tournament organizers to have to comply with every one of their single complaints is just ridiculous to me, to be honest, just because we just have to figure out a system where the business side of it works, right, for everybody rather than just the players.
The thing, and then this goes back to what Threat was saying earlier with the complaining about things and the negative stuff. Like, the players think that I am against them. Right? I am 100% not against them. I used to be one of them. I fucking have seen both sides of the fence. And now it's a lot more stressful than it was just based on the level of expectation, but there's also a lot more money, right? So there's like, when you have the fucking scales, like, things balance out. So this is what I want to get to. If the balance right now is you physically feel like your worth that you are offering through what you are doing outweighs the amount of money you're getting, then let's have a conversation about how we can balance that out. But obviously you're not all paid the same, and I get that, and that's the value that you're able to garner through your agents and through your results and all that kind of stuff. But I am here as somebody who also is doing this every single day, right? Like, this is something that a lot of people are doing every single day, and I want there to be a sustainable Counter-Strike world going forward for all of us. I don't want this to just die because we have an oversaturation, or people go to Valorant because it's a better game or they can get more money, or the fans stop watching because we have too much of this shit. We need to come up with solutions as a collective. That's how we get to the best answer. I have no idea what it feels like to be in Threat's position as a coach, or what you guys do as interviewers and writing articles and doing news reports and doing all that kind of stuff. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what it feels like to be a player in the modern era. I don't know those things. But what I do know is that I have a fantastic relationship with some of these TOs who I can talk to on a level, and I can offer up solutions because for whatever reason, they listen to some of the shit I have to say. And I physically am out here trying to get this data and get this information and talk to these people so that we can do that. But unless people want to sit down and have a proper chat about it, then I'm just going to have to do and try with what I think makes sense. And then if they're still going to choose like to play in a lot of tournaments, then that is completely on them, and I can't do anything about that. That is out of my control, right? There's always going to be a full calendar of Counter-Strike. If you want to play all the way down to tier 3, tier 4 Counter-Strike, you will be able to do that. That's not going anywhere. There's too much money in the gambling side of things for those things to disappear. So we just need to take some personal responsibility, right? Come together as a collective, fuck the CSPPA, actually have a chat as human beings. Let's get some representatives of a player union, maybe who, you know, are not playing all the time. I know that seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but
this is a legit question. Someone please from the CSPPA, like a player that is representative, go somewhere and talk to someone about the CSPPA, because my experiences talking, especially when it was just formed and it just started like doing first like public stuff, every player I talked to, if I want to ask something about the CSPPA, it was just like, just don't ask me about that, please. It's like I have nothing to say. So that was
Wait,
my
even the reps.
Yeah.
What reps?
Yeah,
they didn't want to talk about. They didn't want to talk about their own union.
Yeah, like I don't know anything about that.
All right.
Maybe not literally, but that was it. So I don't know if anything changed, but it doesn't really feel like anything changed. I feel like none of them feel involved enough to talk about it or something. So no one is saying anything. By the way, there was a question in chat. SPUNJ to CSPPA president, would you do the job?
I just retired when all that kind of stuff started, and I'm really quite surprised that I wasn't come to as somebody to be a rep for the players back then. I think I'm probably too far past that now to do it, but if it's something that they want to talk to me about, then I'd definitely be down to have the conversation. But let's move into some questions for Threat, because we've run over. Threat, I don't want to keep you for too long, mate. I've fucking been ranting now for half an hour. I apologize. Sometimes I just lose my fucking tree. We're going to skip the EPL stuff. Prof, you got these questions? Because I know there's a couple of good ones.
Let's start with a quick one. How many CS hours do you have? That is a legit question. I want to know.
I think a bit over 6,000. To be fair, though, I think at least 1,500, 2,000 are idle of those. And out of those, quite interesting, I think when I started playing in 2015, I just played in a casual team back then called Acer. I had like 200 or 300 hours. So I had very little. And when I started coaching, I had, I think, maybe 1,000. So like the absolute majority of that is watching CS.
That is a lot less than I expected. I expected like the 12,000 hours or something.
Well, to be fair, Threat has been out for like 2 years, and hasn't been like around for more than 5, right? Like around 5 years that you've been involved with CSGO. So I feel like that's a relatively reasonable number.
Yeah, and when you're not in the scrims, you do so many things around that, and especially this year, when I'm taking more of the macro role, obviously there's less in-game time for me. So yeah.
Well, just before we move on from that, I'm curious, and if you don't want to tell me, that's cool. But do you use any like of these tools that are going around at the moment?
Yes. That's my answer.
Okay.
That's my answer. Vague enough.
All right. Because I was always wondering, I was genuinely thinking about coaching next year for a little while. So I was trying to see what I thought was good shit. Refrag and Shadow GG seem like ones I'd be using.
Talking about coaching tools, what are your thoughts on the coaching bug situation? Did you ever encounter it in matches or something like that?
So what's the last part?
Did you ever encounter it in a match or something like that?
No, never seen it in a match. Though when the update came, or it was like a month ago, I had actually never seen it, and I started getting it. So what happened was when we were practicing, you got it every second round.
Yeah.
And that was really bad.
When they fixed it first for the first couple of days, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened is the last guy I spectated, where he died, the camera was just there on the ground, and I could move it around, right? which made it really awkward. I just decided then to not be on the server. Then after, you could actually swap back to the players. So then it was fine, but it's, I mean, it is just horrible. Like, I don't know all the evidence they have on all these coaches, but if it is one of the ones they've shown that they've actually abused it and they do it multiple rounds in a row, then obviously, like, just think it, I'm thinking of it like this. So, how easy the cheat is to access, so should that be a part of the judgment? Like, like no. Because, okay, you can talk about Wallach. Wallach is just the game pre-rendering things. So, like, is that a bug or what is it? Like, you're using Wallach? It's part of the game. Why don't they remove pre-rendering? Oh, well, because it will lag. So they can't. And then they try to get around it, right? I don't really buy that it's easy to use. Like, sure, if I would get it in an official match and I've never seen it, maybe in the confusion, I would have it one round, but I would never like say where they are. Right, that far I can go. But if you like use it multiple rounds in a row, then you're obviously exploiting something.
Yeah, Hard Legion's coach, he had a real fucking go of it, didn't he? I heard that when did the E6 stuff end? Prof, it was a couple of weeks ago now, right? It was a week ago.
Last Sunday, right?
Okay, so we should probably get something. I would say before the end of the month. I would definitely say we get something before the end of the month, so that we've got like 9 or 10 days left.
I expected something right after that confession period ended, but nothing's come since. So yeah, hard to know.
I think about it in the sense of the confession period ends, and then after that, they're going to have to look at all the cases. They're going to have to get all the judgment and stuff. They're going to have to work out how they want to take it. Probably talk to the TOs who have the affected player coaches, and then make decisions from there. So probably not a quick process. What are these other questions we got, Prof?
There's a question from Joshua. Says, if Pith played Columbus, do you think NiP would win the major?
Yeah, I'm gonna be cocky and say yes. We would have won the major. We were in really good shape. LG was in really good shape, but we were in better shape. I would say, yeah, we were gonna win the major.
There's a serious question about, not really a question, just says CSGO transfer transparency. But I guess the question is, how do you feel about what Henry is doing with Cloud9 now, announcing the buyouts, the salary, stuff like that? Do you think that helps you in some ways if a similar thing is going to be implemented in other teams and NiP?
Well, I do think it makes sense. I mean, I could see like both sides here, but it's I don't think it should be that controversial either, right? That's the thing where I get really like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. I guess a lot of people already know through rumors, and they're, obviously it's kind of like the rumors, so it's like no surprises. So in general, just being very open with it, probably going to benefit the players.
There was just something that the second part of my interview with Jack is going to come up, and we actually had, this was the biggest answer that he gave, by the way, on this exact topic of, I asked him just why it was such a big deal to organizations to keep these details private, right? And he actually brought up one or a couple of things that I didn't exactly expect him to, just from the player's perspective, where it could be bad for them too, which is just the pressure that they get, not necessarily from the community, which is obviously they will get that. Like, people will question, okay, they shouldn't have paid that much for this player because he's shit, whatever, that kind of stuff. But the pressure that he gets from family and friends and stuff like that, who would figure out, okay, he's getting paid whatever $50,000 a month. Can he like support my whatever it is? They just get their hand out and try to ask for some money from the guys. So I think this is like also a thing that needs to be considered. Just because I do think that for some of these young guys, it could be a problem if their family, like their wide family, everybody who knows them just starts. Yeah, exactly.
That's not a consideration I thought about, but yeah, okay, that could be possible for sure.
There was a question. Maybe the advice that you now give that can shape a new player into becoming a top tier player. There's a guy, I'm not gonna say his name because he says, I'm in a team right now, but I think it won't go anywhere, so I won't say his name because in case his teammates are listening. When is the time I should find a new team?
Well, if it doesn't think it will go anywhere, it should be now. Yeah, well, and that's I think that's the thing. Maybe it's the theme of this entire podcast is people tend to be a bit too nice. You brought it up with the tournament organizers as well, Chad, and I think it's the same sometimes with the players. They almost become too good friends, and they become too nice, and in the way where they have to realize this is what we're doing is entertainment. And it should never be personal. And especially when you're at the elite level, you will get measured and there will be pressure, and that's like the entire point of it. And when someone don't want to play with you, it's because you're worse or bad at CS, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
and that's what it is. Like, can you take it? Okay, maybe you cannot handle being a pro player. I don't know. And also the thing with the argument there, okay, they're gonna get more pressure. If they know their salaries, it's quite a weird one, because in the sense where you will have a lot of pressure, and if you're always trying to do everything to avoid pressure, I feel like that's more of a band-aid to the real issue where you cannot handle pressure. That's my take on it.
So get out now, anonymous man. Go make a new team.
I don't know. The other questions are more or less similar. A lot of things that we answered about NiP. A guy saying there's a rumor that Threat had a career as a competitive escape room athlete. I don't know if there's a story behind that.
Yeah, well, that's probably one of my free life friends. I just don't want to brag, but we currently have the record on the hardest escape room in Stockholm. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, going global soon. You're gonna once the world goes back to normal, take it on tour.
Yeah, a lot of skill involved, obviously.
There's a question in chat also, just lastly about the team. How hard is it to build up mental strength with younger players compared to older players when facing like tough OT losses and stuff like that? He mentions game. Last RMR event to phase when they changed to Hampus. I guess that's before Hampus was in, but I guess you get the kind of the gist of the point. Is there a difference even?
Well, it's hard to say. I think when it comes to how you handle those losses and the pressure is, genetics is one of them, like how you're just born with how well you handle stress. And I think it's easier to change the younger players, though just through life experience, older players just tend to be less stressed in general, right? So I think there's two sides of that. It's easier to change the younger ones, but it's more rare to see the older ones be really stressed.
All right, cool. Okay. Well, is that the end of the questions, Prof? For the little play time?
Yeah, that's it. That's
all right. All right. Well, we've run half an hour over, so I'm sorry for keeping you this long thread. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging around for all of our bullshit.
Listening all of SPUNJ's rants.
Yeah, look, it was going to be
two of them.
It was going to be one of those days.
We had 4 to 5.
I actually enjoyed it. I sort of felt like I had to get some things off my chest, especially with all the burnout thing, because there's so many people just misunderstand the entire situation, and it's really frustrating when you read on things online.
To be fair, it came down a lot to the way that NiP presented it, which just immediately pointed to that assumption that it is like a burnout issue. And obviously, the way that it was portrayed, it was definitely something that I thought was definitely the case. So it's just, I think the announcement just was a little bit unfortunate.
Look, when I read that shit, I don't know. I assume there's always something else going on. I'm one of those guys like, nah, there's something nefarious going on here. Nah, that Nork, he's moving country. I don't know what's like. I always think there's something crazy happening, right? But I think it's one of those things which, in the current version of the world, it's so because we're ending the podcast in a minute, so this is gonna be one of my nice little things for people to think about as they end listening to the show, but. We're in an unprecedented time of history right now where the world is in flux but kind of feels normal at the exact same time. We have to wear masks when we go to the shops, and we have to wash our hands a little bit more. But we found ourselves in a very, very high stress environment where for a lot of people, the world isn't normal and things are quite literally falling apart on an every day. So it is of no... It's not astonishing to me to see the fact that there is higher levels of stress for a younger generation of people who do not know what the future will hold for them. Because how are we meant to know when or if or what is going to happen when the world is literally changing every single day. There's new reports about this. You got fucking presidents of countries doing dumb shit, tweeting dumb shit. People are blowing each other up. It's all a mess. But I think, because we're going to shut it down, guys, just all need to stay calm. And what Threat was saying about stress, just get older. It's easy to deal with stress when you're old. So just age quickly. I don't know how you can do that. Maybe just be an old soul like me. Threat, you want to say anything to anybody before we shut down?
If you're really stressed, you will age faster. So
there we go.
It works out, you know.
So stress more now to be less stressed in the future.
Yeah, I think we solved it.
Perfect. All right. Well, on that bombshell, we're going to be turning off the show, guys. Thank you for tuning in, episode 8. Thank you for Threat for joining us. Prof, Striker, Lucas, as always. We're going to be back next Monday. I was talking to some people about a guest. We don't have one locked in just yet. I think we have someone locked in for the 5th. But it'll be same time, same place next week. 3 p.m. Monday, HLTV Confirmed. Go over to anchor.fm/HLTV and you can check it all out. I need to go get a haircut. So goodbye.